this is recording. Yes. Okay. There's a chance nobody's going to jump on this call, and it will be just me talking to myself. My plan was to paint a model while I talked about creature design, because I've got nothing else to do. Then post it to my YouTube. Because I think some people enjoyed my musings. Today I'm painting it appears to be a third-party carrion crawler. This model was sent to me from a dear friend, Dylan, at White Tiger Tablecraft, which I've spoken about before. At my request, mind you. I saw him post a bunch of old school metal models, and I saw the silhouette of this creature, and something about it drew it to me. For those watching at home, I'm going to see if I can focus my camera and show what this model looks like. You can kind of see that it's a worm, or more like a caterpillar, with a segmented body and almost like a plate covering its head. It has two tube-like eyes, similar to an anemone. Now that I'm looking, there's an unfortunate air bubble on one of his eyes that I didn't notice before. I would have filled that, but I don't think I could get too nitpicky. When talking about creature design, as I previously stated, I get pulled into a lot of the same pitfalls due to my own subjective taste in creatures, monsters, tropes. I look at it from the perspective of a fantasy, old school Dungeons and Dragons setting. So the creatures that I want to represent on the tabletop tend to range lower level cap. I don't really like high level creatures. In my experience, it's funner to fight more basic creatures. When you get to more intelligent things, they tend to become more like NPCs and things you can role play with. Not that there's anything wrong with role playing with creatures. I think that some of the greatest encounters can be role playing with the creature. It depends on the intelligence of the creature and not being too boring. Like, a good example would be, I remember learning, I think this information comes from 2nd edition, but I like the information too much, so I pulled it into AD&D. But ropers supposedly have the intelligence level of a stupid orc. And hearing that made me want to run a roper in a dungeon. Not just to eat the party, but to roleplay with the party. I wanted to catch a party member, but not eat them immediately. Maybe hold them upside down by the leg, and then bully them into doing something for it. Maybe finding better food, because it's tired of eating the same bats and cave shit. It wants something gourmet. And it thinks that by pressuring you, it will be able to reach that desire. And it ended up being a really memorable encounter. When I look at the roper, and I compare its earlier iterations to its later iterations in, say, 5th edition, I'm not just going to say the old school is better for the sake of it's older. But I think it depends on several factors. I tend to like less edgy variations of monsters. Not all sharp edges, sharp teeth, angry, sharp eye. You don't have to be sharp to be a scary monster. A scary monster could be something like a slime. Literally no sharp edges. What's scary about a slime is the fact that It's unthinking, unfeeling. Slimes are scary for what they aren't. And I think that's a master class in creature design, is looking at something like the ochre jelly. Technically, I guess not a slime, it's a jelly, but it still counts. I think personifying stupid monsters leads to weak creature design. Not every creature needs to be intelligent or human-like. In fact, I find some of the strongest monsters, when I say strong, I mean from a design perspective, not like a power level, are creatures that don't have a particular how do I say? I'm losing my train of thought. I think that some of the better designed creatures don't have human-like traits, and not for the sake of being alien, but look at real things. I come to this example often, and I might have said it in a previous video, in which case to the three of you that have seen my previous video, I apologize for repeating myself. But when we talk about giant insects and their use in Dungeons and Dragons, or any fantasy, sci-fi even, I guess not sci-fi as much, as you could just blast them with a gun and it's over. Whereas in fantasy, it might be a little more dangerous to encounter one. It's all perspective and scenario, I assume. But these giant insects are unfeeling, unthinking machines. They're very akin to machines in that way. You can't read them. I definitely talked about this in my previous video on musings on creature design, but when you can't read into a creature, into what they're thinking or what they're feeling, it makes them scarier, right? It makes it more intimidating to fight them. It makes it scary when you don't know what something is thinking. You just have to glean what you can. Fuck it, I'm gonna fill that bubble. It's one of those things that if I don't do it, it's gonna bother me forever and ever and ever. So how am I gonna do it? I'm going to mix the tiniest amount of milliput possible and just paint over the curing milliput gently so that I don't screw up the shape of my fix. And hopefully, by the time it cures, it won't have a weird reaction with the paint. The amount I'm mixing, I don't know if you could see that. That's on my top finger. Let's see. You can't even see it. It's very little. Let me get my sculpting shaper tool. But as I was saying, I think that when we're talking about creature design, it's incredibly important to think about the function of the creature. I don't know how much I talked about this previously, but when we discuss creature function, at its core, a creature's function is to interact, right? It's to interact with the players. When you think about monsters, they generally attack players or eat them. But they don't have to do that. The Zorn is a good example. The Zorn wants to eat gems. That can obviously be an issue for party members, as gems are extremely expensive. Zorns, if I recall correctly, I haven't used them in game because they're a little higher level, but they can move through walls and earth and like walk through it as if it was like a liquid almost. And this could be particularly troublesome. Imagine one walking through a wall, grabbing your gemstone, and then walking through a different wall. It's a drive-by. So why am I talking about function of creatures? Well, as previously stated, in that encounter, the Zorn wasn't looking to cut your head off or eat you. It was looking to steal a jewel from you, right? When I design creatures, I think it's really important not just to create creatures that kill you, but creatures that are fun for the player. Fun for the player to interact with. This fucking webcam is killing me. Fun for the player to interact with. Something that will be memorable, I think, above all else. My biggest fear hosting a game, which doesn't happen as often as I'd like to, unfortunately, is that I'll host something boring, something not memorable, something people don't care about, something they'll be on their phones during the game, or afterwards, forget about it. That would be a nightmare. My job as a DM is to entertain and do something my players will remember. That begs the question, I want to ask my previous players about sessions I've DM'd to see what they remember. So although my memory is strong, I'm sure a lot of that's pruned away. I'd like to see the important parts to them. Maybe I could build upon that in the future. The storytelling is important. As I was saying, I have a creature that, for example, I discussed the one that eats treasure and shits in treasure chests, then runs away. I have a creature that, I'm just looking up at my pile of creatures. I have one called, I don't know what their official name is. I've been calling them clam kids. They're these mischievous bipedal bivalves that enjoy playing practical jokes on fishermen or sailors by ramming into them on a pier and knocking them into the water. These creatures don't really seem very intimidating insofar as they can't, murder you. They could still be dangerous if other environmental stimuli, like there's a whirlpool in the water, But I think that the fun part is, imagine if a player's job was to kill off these annoying creatures and they had to go waste their time killing 3 or 4 of them that are hiding amongst the coral underwater. I think that would be memorable. I'm still trying to fill this hole. I apologize. Oh, it's about right. I think I basically did the job. I'll try not to bore listeners who aren't actually watching the video of me sitting in place too much longer. I find that when talking about memories in D&D or any tabletop or any story for that matter, it's very important to touch on the imagery in multiple senses, because that's what memory's about, right? It's not just your visual stimuli. It's a damn good gap fill, if I do say so myself. That took a little bit of time, but it was worth it. Every time I look at that eye, I'm going to remember that I filled that gap, and I'm going to smile. It's a reminder to always push yourself that extra little bit, even if it's a pain in the ass. It's worth it. It's worth it. Otherwise, you're going to kick yourself later down the line when it's varnished. Always push yourself, even if it's a pain. As I was saying, oop, got my paintbrush. As I was saying, when I think back to memories I have of DMing, I recall utilizing all kinds of senses: smell, taste, sight, obviously. I think that sound is particularly memorable for players. The way a creature sounds and trying to describe it to a player is important. So often the first thing you see, not see, but the first thing that you perceive of a creature is the way it sounds. So having a good idea of what a creature sounds like or trying to describe it to the party is probably pretty important. It can be underwhelming if your creature, you don't really know what it sounds like. You just say it's a snuffling sound or try to liken it to a different animal that's pretty rudimentary. Again, because each human player, has a different perspective on life and different experiences, we're all going to take the same information differently. So you say it sounds like a dog, the person that grew up with a small dog is going to think about a small yapping dog, most likely. Versus the person that grew up with a huge dog is going to probably jump to the thought of a giant dog barking loudly, or a mean dog, versus like a little Shih Tzu or whatever. So when thinking about the design of creatures, specifically regarding functionality, I look at this knockoff carrion crawler, and I look at the other carrion crawlers I have in my collection. They're more akin to the original illustrations. They're described as having a cephalopod-like head, tentacles, and a caterpillar-like body, being green, paralyzing with their tentacles, many legs, be able to walk on the walls as easily as it walks on the floor. When I saw the new iterations, I think it was the 3.5 version of the carrion crawler, I was disappointed. I have a model of that version too. I didn't paint as a carrion crawler. I took the tentacles off and I painted as something else. Some kind of grub or something. It just doesn't strike me as fun as the old school. Subjective, of course. However, I think it's important to understand that these differences, for example, in this one, it doesn't have a squid-like cephalopod head at all. It has a large plate covering its face. It still has tentacles, but it has two anemone-like tube eyes, barely visible underneath the face plate, which I'm trying to define now, and that's what I was gap filling a little earlier. I think it's coming along. Now at least you can tell where the eyes are. I think I'm going to make them contrast by painting them a bright red, where the tentacles will be more of a fleshy pink. But when I see this version of the carrion crawler, the main difference is the plated head and the hidden face compared to the exposed head and face of its more traditional contemporary. How this changed mechanically? Assuming they're both carrion crawlers, and I make slight variations the way they behave in game due to this, maybe it's a regional change or a slight species change, I would assume that this carrion crawler is more defensive, right? It doesn't charge at party members necessarily, or things that are alive, to eat them or paralyze them. I think this will be a little more plotting, and if things attack at it or things scare it, it sucks its tentacles into like a hidden compartment, and then it like tucks its face away and it turns its head down towards wherever it's scaring it with its armored head plate. Maybe a single eye looks out to evaluate if conditions have improved after some time has passed. This changes the way the encounter goes entirely while being the same creature, the same stat line. So now, players go from being on the defense to being on the offense, they want to get rid of it. And carrion crawler is a very scary enemy to low-level players, as it could paralyze anybody it touches with its tentacles. Going from trying to avoid it as it's running at you to trying to deal with it while it's armored. This one looks especially armored. It has like plates, whereas the other one is more fleshy looking in its segments. I think I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to try to, maybe I'll call it the armored carrion crawler or something. The greater armored carrion crawler. I'm particularly fond of names like that. I'll jump to Y in a moment. I've got a few field guides pulled up next to me. As I stated previously, I'm working on a new field guide, or a new monster manual. This one's going to be hopefully more in tune with field guides that I'm fascinated with. I've always loved field guides since I was a kid. In fact, I'll show one to the camera. One of the first field guides I've ever owned, I think I got from a Scholastic book fair. It's called Bugs by Paula Hammond. Nature's tiniest and terrifying creatures. It's got this big millipede on the front, tarantula, some kind of moth, the fire ant. And inside, you can see they have these, not even illustrations, they're almost like 3D renderings. This is an earwig. Gives a little description in a paragraph, bit name in bold, scientific name, where in the world you find it, their habitat, size, reproduction, lifespan, and diet. That's it. Pretty simple. And this spans beyond just bugs. It actually goes into crabs, frogs, salamanders, lampreys, even some fish. I wonder why it's called just bugs when it goes into so many different things. Oh, I remember this illustration or image well. You can't really see it, but it's a scabies mite. It's a green blob with 4 limbs and a head. I remember it being so alien. In fact, looking at it now, I could see some of my creature design has similar facets to this, like the way the skin striates, the fleshy lines across it. I haven't looked at this book in years, truth be told. They're burned into my memory. The butterfly bug with its paintbrush-like tail? I'm not sure exactly what that is. Weevils with their elongated proboscis. Anyway, I'm very fascinated in field guides. I think they're wonderful resources. They're incredibly inspiring to me, especially at a young age. Originally, I wanted to be an entomologist when I was young, up until high school. But I decided against it. Became therapist instead. In writing a field guide, a fantasy field guide to monsters, I'm going to be doing a lot of the same creatures I had in the Vermin volume, except the formats will be different, the types of information will probably be different. I'll be including more creatures. I'll be looking at it from a more ecological standpoint, hopefully a little more, a little less clunky, a little cleaner, because the Vermin volume, my last monster manual attempt, has a lot of illustrations from different people in the community. I'm very grateful for. Photo, all kinds of information, and it's kind of just all over the place. Occasionally, people reach out to me and tell me that they've really enjoyed using it. And they tell me of their travels in the fantasy realms and how their parties or, how they've interacted with these creatures. It makes me really happy to hear that my little bit of my life, my experiences, my personality and creativity extends to fantasy worlds beyond my own, beyond the ones I write. It's something to think about, but part of me hopes that in some way creatures I write outlive me, even if people don't know that I created them. I don't know who created the Mimic, for example. Maybe it was just Gygax. I'm not sure who had the initial idea. I don't think many people do, but now it's a fantasy archetype. It's in everything. Even if it originally didn't bite people. Now that's all they do. Sometimes I wonder, I won't get too existential or philosophical, what if I was to be remembered for a creature? Let's hope it's one that I sculpted or designed, not one that I just wrote rules for somebody else sculpted, even if that person is extremely talented. I'm looking at you, DM Jolly, and your blind... I called it the blind cave ogre. You called it a potato demon. One of the best designs for a creature. One of the earlier ones I've seen, especially in this hobby. I recently reached out to him to ask if I could put it in my new monster manual because I love it so much. And of course, graciously, he agreed. Very nice guy. If you haven't talked to him, give him a follow, chat with him a little bit. He's really kind. As I continue, I wonder which monster I would be remembered for. No, not even remembered for, just which one would persist beyond me. I should probably put my put my effort into everything that I create in my next one. I don't want to be remembered for something stupid. Or I don't want the monster that makes it to be something I just hashed out in 30 seconds. Ah, Rory! I am so happy to see another friend. I've been alone for 27 minutes. Can you hear me, Rory? I see somebody in the background.
Hello.
Hello.
What is the noise?
I was just talking about creature design and how I'd like to be remembered someday.
Tanner.
How are you? Can you hear me? Is my mic working?
You sound like a chipmunk. Your audio is all screwy, bud.
It's screwy? I wonder if it's recording wrong.
Yeah.
That'd be really funny if I recorded an hour
Your
long
video's
of...
kind of fine, but your audio sounds like you're a chipmunk.
It's like high-pitched?
And it's like delayed, and then it'll like squeak through it.
I hope it's all screwed up. That'd be really funny.
We just wanted to say hello.
Hi.
Hope you're having a lovely night.
I am. Well, I'm not. I spilled a pot of... What was it? I spilled an entire pot of beef stroganoff onto the floor. And I had to clean it all up.
I will say, I wish I could understand what you're saying right now, but I'll say that I'm hoping... I'm assuming you're coming to that. I'm hoping you are.
I'm doing well. Thank you, Rory. I'm sorry you can't... I wonder if nobody's going to be able to hear me. I opened this... I extended an invite to so many people just to come and chat, and if none of them understand me... Huh. Unintentional, I promise.
Alright, we're gonna have to say goodnight now. Have a good night, Tanner.
Thank you for popping in. I appreciate it. Good night. Wow. Unbelievable. They couldn't understand anything I was saying. Back to talking to myself. Oh, never mind. Wolf Lich appears. I wonder if you could hear me okay, or if I'm lagging for you as well. Maybe. I might be. Rory popped in a moment ago, but he couldn't understand anything I was saying. I'll let you know when I could see or hear you. If you can hear me, I was talking about monster design and how some individuals that create monsters are outlived by the concepts that they create, such as the creator of the Mimic. I believe that's Gygax, but it might be one of his associates back at TSR. I don't know exactly who came up with that concept initially, but that monster design has outlived, I think, the creator. It might have. It's definitely a really large one. I'll let you know if you're muted. But if you're just popping in to observe, that's fine too. Nothing spectacular, I promise. Just painting a model. Hopefully in the recording it could understand my voice, and if you guys can't, that would be nice. I'll have to adjust my camera slightly, hopefully to accommodate. I'm still base coating this. I think they're called carrion worms from Hearth something models, miniatures. I only recently found it in the Lost Mini wiki, so I don't really quite know its name. I'm gonna double check and see. I don't know if anybody said anything. No, it doesn't look like it. Well, I hope you pop in, say hi for a moment. I've chatted with you on Instagram a few times. Not over video, though. Might be surprising. I think people know what I look like at this point. But through my musings regarding creature design, moving away from the philosophical being outlived by your creatures, and back into the function or features of creatures, the creature features, I think that it's really important when designing a creature to make sure that they're not stupidly powerful. Make sure that you don't try to make them look badass or make them have a really distinct trait that they're gonna excel in. At the end of the day, creatures with very basic abilities are memorable. I really hate some more modern, famous, like, indie creatures. I've seen one called a False Hydra. I think it's a perfect example of an over-designed creature. I believe it was created for 5th edition, which I'll try not to hate on for the sake of hating on it. But the idea, to my memory and understanding, I haven't looked too deep into it, it's a creature, a Hydra, with human faces that's abilities to make people forgot that it existed. Ironically, I wish I could forget that that thing exists. I think it's very... I think it's a poor example of creature design. I digress. It just seems very overly designed for no good reason. I prefer... I'll use one of my own indie creature designs, the Flesh Cube, as an example. The Flesh Cube is a 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot cube of flesh. Its only purpose is to block the way, sometimes alerting wandering monsters, acting as sentries, or like to block an entrance or a doorway, some kind of passage. I think it moves very slowly and it can crush you if it rotates and lands on you, but it's not really a dangerous creature. The idea of a creature's only function being to block your way, I think, leads to a very interesting gameplay scenario where, how do you deal with it? If you try killing it, it's going to start screaming and attract more monsters. You can try going around it, but that's avoiding the problem. So this creature, a very simple creature, is just a lump of flesh, and it raises all kinds of questions on how to deal with it. It doesn't have to be a wild, 15-headed, human face. It doesn't need to be all that. It just has to be a blob of skin. And hopefully it'll be more memorable. Although the false Hydra has cult appeal at this point. Give it a Google search and you'll see what I mean with over-designed. It's like a creepypasta. Very annoying. And double check you're not talking, by the way, because I see you're not muted. Oh, you are muted. Never mind. I'll turn up your user volume in case you do start talking. Or you might blow out my, my mic. I think as I design more creatures, I've been finding that their alignments are always neutral. I think I have like one or two that's chaos or lawful. And I was reflecting on that. Why do I keep creating creatures that have a neutral alignment? Keep in mind I'm not using good and evil, I'm just using chaos, law, or neutral. And I found that because they're of such basic intellect, they're animals or insects or crustaceans, they don't really have a propensity to act towards or against law and order. They just want to eat, shit, reproduce, that kind of thing. Then I asked myself, should I be creating things that follow, like how does the dynamic change in game other than a chaotic thing isn't gonna follow a code of conduct. It's gonna act in a irrational, strange way. But I think people that create chaotic things think that just kind of means evil. They don't really make it act chaotic, they just make it act mean. In reality, a chaotic thing at its core... Oh, bye. Damn, I wish I could hear you. Maybe I was too boring. And I apologize if you're DMing me over Instagram. My phone's over there. I'm not looking at it. I'll get back to you later. As I was saying, I think that it could be interesting to make a creature that's chaotic. I made a giant slot machine creature, for example. I talked about this, the golden eagle, during my last video, so I'll try not to belabor the subject. But in terms of its alignment, it's not neutral, it's chaotic, because it's a slot machine. Its entire purpose is to generate random results. However, could it be argued that this creature would be lawful, because it follows the same... If you pull the lever, it rolls random results. That's its code of conduct, that's its law, right? It doesn't start stomping on you randomly. It doesn't attack, it just waits for input, like a machine. So maybe I should change it to lawful. Now I'm confusing myself. This is why I stick to neutrality in my creature design. I don't want to think. I want to be like a creature. They do one thing well. Dwayne! Thank you, Dwayne, for joining my impromptu podcast. Can you hear me?
There's something wrong with your microphone. It's coming through incredibly fast and squeaky. You sound like a chipmunk.
I wonder if...
Like it's hurting my ear.
I wonder if it's gonna do that for the other... I've done that for Ratboy Rory previously.
It's like a delay. I know, I think it's on your end because I was talking to people. It's fine. It's like I can see your video. There's like a delay from when you start talking to when the audio comes through, and it comes through all at once and sped up.
Huh. Like, it goes all at once at the same time? Or does it like...
I can't understand what you're saying.
I was talking about...
I'm gonna leave.
I was talking... Okay. Well, that'll be the gimmick for this this recording. Nobody will be able to understand what I'm saying. That makes it funnier. I promise that wasn't intentional. I'm not that clever. Nor do I have the technical know-how to achieve such a funny result. I lost my train of thought. was talking about, oh, chaos neutrality. I think I fucked up my paint job. When talking about what's important to me in my creature design, I think my sweet spot, or what I feel comfortable with, is in creatures that are more of animal intelligence. I enjoy creatures that just fulfill their own basic desires, then move on with their lives. I think they're extremely interesting to watch in real life. As many of you know, I have a pet crayfish. I enjoy watching my pet crayfish just do crayfish things. Occasionally poke his head out. He knows I'm coming close because he knows that I am a harbinger of shrimp pellets. Well, not shrimp. You shouldn't feed shrimp pellets to your crayfish. I think unless they're farmed or something because they carry diseases. I actually feed my crayfish tadpole food, carrots, bottom feeder formula, etc. Just a variety of fish foods, as well as vegetables and whatnot. But as I was saying in discussing my crayfish, hello, can you hear me at all? I haven't talked with you before. Can you hear me?
Hello? Oh.
Is everything okay?
If you can hear me, I think your mic is a little wonky. It's sounding like very sped up.
There's something wrong with my mic?
I heard very fast-forwarded laughter.
There's something wrong with my mic? Let's see. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect the lobby. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go.
If I turn on my video, does it screw up my mic? Can you hear me?
Well, now it hasn't, so...
Okay.
Oh, yes, I can hear you fine now.
Okay. It had to do with my video was playing. I had to disconnect and reconnect. You don't have to turn your video on, by the way. I am recording this for my shitty YouTube channel. So, I'm just talking about using some creature design. What was that, Dwayne?
It sounded like a robotic chipmunk was coming through.
Really? It's funny because a couple people popped in, and I think Ratboy Rory told me the same thing. He told me, I can't understand a word you're saying. I was just talking about, in creature design, I found that I've been designing a lot of creatures with a neutral alignment. And I've been avoiding chaotic and lawful. And I wasn't really sure why. It wasn't really an active decision. I found that as I've been designing creatures, they've just been tending to be more neutral. Like they're of like animal intelligence, and they don't really have agendas or morality. They're just kind of like big lobsters, things like that. And I asked a question.
Yeah, I like that about your creatures. You make like dungeon ecosystems. It's very cool.
Yeah, no, and I was just talking about how I was working on a field guide, a fantasy field guide. I showed off the first monster, well, not monster manual, the first field guide I've ever owned. It's a book called Bugs, Nature's Tiniest and Terrifying Creatures. I got it from like a book fair when I was a kid. But I was talking about how in field guides, I really enjoy the ecological information. In fact, one of my favorite field guides I haven't shown quite yet. I'll pop it up for a second. It's called, there's no information. I hate book covers. I don't know if I told any of you this or anybody this. I hate like the book flaps. I just don't like them. The book dust covers. Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I always throw those away.
I hate that shit. This is the Manual of Marine Invertebrates. So, inside, it is a field guide regarding different crustaceans. We have all kinds of saltwater aquarium information. It looks like anemones, crabs, shrimp, lobsters, a couple fish at the end, but I don't care as much about that. When I first learned that anemones like walked around and had eyes and shit, I was blown away. But in discussing field guides like this, I'm trying to make my my monster manual closer to a field guide. I should just start reading more field guides to become inspired. So I'm not sure what I'm missing. I also need both of your input on a name for a monster manual field guide. My last monster manual, as you know, is the Vermin volume. And I'm kind of stuck to the D&D, monster manual, fiend folio. Like, is that alliteration?
I think the alliteration is cool. I think it might be important to keep some alliteration.
Yeah. I mean, the word creature codex is just fun. Like, come on.
I think,
It rolls off the tongue really well.
I was thinking the critter catalog, but I'm not sure. I'm not cemented on that one quite yet. But let me ask you, because I've been doing a lot of talking. Tell me about your favorite creature design from any media. It could be D&D, it could be sci-fi, video games, whatever. What is your favorite creature design and why?
An absolutely spectacular fashion. I would say, I think when it comes to just like a creature that I just like sincerely enjoy, like out of nowhere, I look at this thing and I'm like, yeah, this is the fucking guy. Is I don't know. I'm trying to remember if it's not Batra because that's the evil version of Mothra. I have to look it up, but it's a Godzilla monster that ends up making an appearance in Godzilla All Out Attack, I think. But it's this little red, stubby, like goofy ass kaiju that is like put up against Godzilla and like King Ghidorah. I'll have to look this up really quickly.
Is it Ghidorah or Ghidorah? I don't know.
Honestly, it depends on how you want to pronounce it. I've had people argue both.
I digress.
Just like what? Yeah. Ghidorah's just always been what I've said, so it's kind of, it would be hard. I heard Ghidorah actually the first time when the MF Doom.
Yes.
That alternate project King Ghidorah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was like, Ghidorah? Oh, I guess we would say it like that too.
I was always impartial to Gigan. I have a toy of him somewhere from my childhood. I used to play Godzilla, Attack of the Monsters. It was the GameCube Godzilla game. I remember I had to plug in cheat codes every single time I booted it up, so I memorized like 70 old school, like, up, down, left, right, Konami code.
You're speaking my language. I loved the GameCube Godzilla fighting game.
I remember it. But you were saying it was a red kaiju that was stumpy? Why do you like that one?
Yeah. There's something about the shape language which I'm really just obsessed with characters that gave me just this idea. It's like, this is just a little dude and I love him. He was so immediately endearing.
Yeah. So it's cute. Is that what you're saying?
I wanted to understand why this giant monster. I was like, I love this man so much.
So you enjoy it because it's cute, but it's massive. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's a juxtaposition between being...
I love it. It's giant, but it's adorable. Yeah.
Why do you like cute monsters? Genuinely. I'm not disagreeing. I just want to know.
Yeah. I think it's great just because I am always in favor of, like, creating creatures and not having too many hard and fast rules about what a creature or a monster is. So, like, everyone, first thought of someone's monster might be something big, scary, and ugly, but some kind of big creature thing could also be something fun or not inherent. Like, because when people say monster, they think something often inherently evil. And I really like, it makes me think of the Ray Harryhausen quote, the guy who was just kind of like that leading force in stop motion animation.
Yeah. From
like the early 20s on, he did all the Sinbad movies. He was like, I like the word creature more because monster has like an evil connotation.
Yeah, it's a negative connotation,
so that
for sure.
Kind of made me think, it was like, so like a creature or a monster that is more than just something to be defeated or something evil. That's actually one of the things I really enjoy about like your whole ideas about like monster ecosystems, and they're existing outside of just something for a player or a character to hit. I
Yeah.
always think that's a really fun idea.
Yeah, I love that idea.
What about you, Dwayne? What's your ideal monster? Why?
It's hard to pick just one, you know?
You have to pick one.
Because I was racing through my head.
Yeah, I love all of the weird aliens from the Half-Life series a lot.
Oh, okay.
They're all
Oh,
fantastic
those are very
designs. And that also falls into like the ecosystem sort of things. They're just aliens from a different ecosystem that have fallen into ours.
Can you name a particular? Because I didn't
Sorry,
hear
I
a
can't see
specific.
that,
I don't hear a specific monster, Dwayne. You're dodging the question.
I know, I really like the look of the bull squid. The bull squid's cute.
Okay, fair, fair. I am familiar with that one.
I can't talk too much right now because of my throat.
You're okay. Don't worry, this is not a high quality
It's still a
recording.
bit sick.
Oh, you're fine. The last interview, quote unquote, I did was with Goobins, and we degraded the video so bad. There's like 3 pixels on the screen at a time. So
No.
I don't know if I'm gonna screw this one up that bad. It'll be, you know, you can listen to it and understand what's happening, unless I'm talking in a chipmunk voice the whole time, which would be an issue.
That'd be pretty funny though.
We'll see. We'll see. My recording will probably stop in 9. I'm not going to stop, but my recording automatically stops at the hour mark, so I might just have to start a second recording, because I want to talk for a little while longer. I'm not done with my paint job after all. But you said the bull squid. That's a bipedal, tentacles at one end. Does it shoot like loogies at you, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, like it's goo at you.
Okay. Why is that
It's a
your...
self-defense mechanism.
Is that your favorite monster of all time?
Not of all. I don't even know if I have a favorite one of all time.
If you like a
the hard
monster,
question.
if you like a monster, you must have one you like the most. So what is it?
I'll
It's a hard question.
have to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like another thought I had was like also Bort of the Boreal of the
Oh.
Boreal Valley from Dark Souls 3.
Was he
I love
the
him.
cold
He's so
one that
fucking
walks on all
weird.
4s with the great
Oh.
music?
You know what?
Yeah,
Think
he's
of
got the
Dark
big.
Souls. The basilisks, those little guys.
Oh,
Oh,
the
those
giant
things.
eyeballs?
That is
I love
Yeah.
that.
excellent design. Yeah.
Well, they're not real giant eyeballs. That's just... Yeah, I know. They have the little
Yes,
ones.
that's one of the things. They're. I'm trying to think of the word. The animals do it to scare other animals.
Yes, yes, yes.
Uh,
I think that those creatures, the basilisks, I think that I should like them more. Hear me out. I don't like reptiles. Sorry, I just don't. I don't hate them, but in general, I don't know. I just don't really find them exciting. I think that one of my big blind spots is dragons, ironically, as I love Dungeons and Dragons. I have a couple models of dragons, but I haven't painted like any. I think I have one like snake-like model, but I have several dragons I need to paint. But again, like I said earlier, I really like lower level creatures. I think that they're more interesting than higher
Yeah.
level creatures.
mhm.
If I had to give my favorite
I like
creature...
them because.
Oh, go for it.
Kind of.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I interrupted you. It's fine.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I was saying I really also enjoy lower level creatures. Or
Yeah.
Like, creatures that aren't like high level monsters or gods to fight because I really love the smaller scale for tabletop stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love the big thing is just being saving the village as to opposed to saving the world. So
Yeah.
having weird wild monsters that kind of just exist in the world as to opposed to like these great forces is very interesting to me.
I agree. I think that when a creature fills a niche, I think it's a lot more interesting to encounter them in their habitat. I'm a proponent of don't put a monster in a dungeon when it doesn't have a reason to be there, unless that's the point. You know, unless it's supposed to be an interloper. I mean, it can be done well, but if you just jam something in a room, like, you know, the dragon in a corridor it can't even fit
Yeah.
into, have a reason why. Like,
Yeah,
maybe it was in
exactly.
there as a baby, and they were feeding it, and now it can't get out. Whatever. There should be a reason for it, not just it's in there. Why? I don't know. Because I need to stock this room with something. Like, it's much more important to have
There's
that.
no reason for wolves to be in a dungeon.
Well, what if a wolf tamer brought his pet wolves into a dungeon? Whatever, right? Goblins ride wolves. What if the goblins rode their wolves into the dungeon? There could be a reason for it, but just randomly encountering a pack of wolves in the middle of a dungeon, yeah, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
When I answer my question regarding like my favorite creature design, the first thing I jump to, thinking I go straight to Pikmin, as it's been one of the biggest inspirations of my life. I really, really like the Water Dumple, but I think that it might have been surpassed by the oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking. The Aristocrab, the Peckish Aristocrab. It's a giant crab
Yes.
with armor, an armored claw like a fiddler crab, and an onion shape.
Yeah.
And I love it because, well, first, I just love it aesthetically. I'm a huge fan of crustaceans. But secondly, I really love how its movement, I love the way that it moves. I love that in its attacks, when it gets desperate, it starts blowing bubbles, which seems like it doesn't really work very well in combat. It doesn't do much. But then you read in the monster manual, the Piclopedia, that it's like when they get stressed out, they have to expel bubbles. It's just like how they vent their stress. And that is such a fun detail. I think that really speaks to what I love about creature design is these little details. Like, it's almost like a second phase in Dark Souls, right? Like a little thing that happens at some given point.
I appreciate your mentioning of Pikmin.
Oh yeah.
I think another creature I have been, because there's a vibe going on here, and I appreciate it. Man, all I can keep saying is man of culture with saying Pikmin being a big inspiration, because my love for creatures and stuff comes from like Pikmin and like Gandhi Tordakovsky cartoons. That was like when I was just drawing like violent monsters. It was because like everything I watched on like Samurai Jack and shit.
Oh yeah.
But I think one of my favorite designs, period, and it's definitely because it was on the cover of Pikmin 2.
Oh, the Crawdad.
Crawdad, the one that comes out a little hole.
Yes.
I am obsessed with him.
Did you like the bug-eyed one in 3 and 4?
He's my man.
Did you like the one with the big eyes in 3 and 4? What were your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. What are my thoughts on what?
The giant eyeball variant in Pikmin 3 and 4.
Eyeball. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, it's okay. Am I lagging? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a little bit of lag, but you're alright.
There's a version in Pikmin 3 and 4 that have really large eyes. It's the crayfish enemy in Pikmin 2, but it has big eyeballs.
Yes! Yes, that one's awesome. I love that guy. I also love the bread bug.
Yep, the bread bug's classic. I actually have, hold on.
Bread bugs are so cute.
If you look, I made a bread bug diorama.
My god, that is incredible.
It was a long time ago. It's going for
so good.
It's going for a squirt bottle cap, and the background you can't really tell, but it's the wooden.
Oh, that's so great.
It's the wooden panel.
That's a bottle cap. That's awesome.
It's a wooden panel with the chalk face drawn on it. I also have. I'll reach over here. One of my other newly found favorite Pikmin enemies. Let's see if I can focus this a little bit.
That's my man.
The Mamuta.
The Mamuta. Yeah. Oh, dude, that's so good. I love that. Are those aquarium plants?
Yeah, they're fake plants.
Yeah, I actually just got some of those for some personal projects as well. I am, if you don't mind me turning my camera on.
Oh yeah, let's see. You can keep your cameras on. I don't care.
Yeah. I run a group. I run for a large group on Saturdays. We run tabletop games. We just moved from D&D to Knave.
Oh, Knave.
We
yeah.
regularly have like 14 people.
I backed second edition.
So
I'm waiting on it.
D&D's not going to be the vibe there. But so I've been building these little townhouses, just like little kind of rickety village sets, and I've been really happy with roofing, which has been taking forever. But I've just been doing individual tiles. And I've got so many little houses, and I'm finishing up the roofs on all of them.
Oh, that's cute. I like that a lot,
Because
actually.
then I'm gonna spray them down. Yeah, I'm.
Those are nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting it done because I have this really nice big textured grass mat that I found on the internet that's like really great for minis. It's supposed to be like cut up into pieces and used for like arts and crafts, but it's like this big 30-inch mat that's got all these little
Puffs
puffs
and little
and-
textures.
Nice
Later,
to meet
Dwayne.
you.
Thank you for joining. It was a pleasure
Bye.
talking with you, friend. Dwayne and I talk frequently on Instagram. I'm recording again, by the way. I had a bit of a technical difficulty. I didn't catch your name, by the way. I see your
Oh, I'm
your
David.
handle. David?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My hobby idol, his name is David, actually. He's a grognard from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He ran a local hobby shop next to where I used to live, and he got me onto old school D&D. I've always loved D&D, but I've never like played it up until that point. I just had monster manuals. He ran a shop by himself. He was the only employee, and he frequently was asleep at the register when I came in. Great guy, very great guy. But anyway, in regards
That's
to Pikmin and creature design, I recently had the pleasure of playing through all of the most recent Pikmin game, and I was overjoyed to see that they really doubled down on their Piklopedia. I was disappointed when it wasn't a part of Pikmin 3.
Yeah, I like just to see it again and like look through because I mean, like you, I'm just obsessed with their weird little minutia of how everything has all this wonderful, very lifelike detail. And although they're very strange, they feel very like legitimate in their existence and like they're tangible creatures.
I think most of them do, but there's a few that I really did not like. A few designs in that game that I think I've talked about this before to some extent. I don't know if I recorded it or anything, but
Ooh, you are
I
cutting
think
out
that-
super hard now.
what was that?
I said you were cutting out pretty hard there. Past 10
Oh,
seconds.
sorry. I wonder why. Nobody's using the internet. I'm not sure. But there's a few designs from Pikmin that I really did not like from the most recent game. Particularly, and I won't spoil it for the couple of you that don't play or haven't played it yet, but the last boss of the game I really did not like at all. I actually hated the design and everything from the way that
Oh, no.
like it interacted with the environment. It just felt very much like an outside force saying we need to have something. I don't even want to say cute, but like that's a tie-in with the mammal themes in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you.
Compared to like the Titan Dweevil from 2, I don't know. I just really did not like that boss. I should note the segmented Crabster from Pikmin 2 was my favorite enemy for a very long time. In fact, I still have a plush doll my grandma sewed of that boss when I was a kid. Because as a child, when you want a toy,
super
you're just like,
sweet.
I just want it. It doesn't exist, Tanny. It doesn't. Nobody has made this. But grandmas are the greatest people in the world, so we went to Joann's or some craft store and got material. And I still have it. I've always kept it. I treasure that thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What kind of creature design do you not like?
I think just design-wise, like when you have a monster that is just a slightly different human, you know? Like, I always love a vampire design that's like a fucking man-bat thing. But, like, you know, most vampires are just people with red eyes and pale skin, and that's really boring.
I
So,
like
I don't like
Nosferatu.
the...
Nosferatu?
Oh, what was that? You cut out again.
Nosferatu. Bulb.
Oh, yes. So anytime like it's a monster, but it's just kind of like a slightly different person, I'm like, come on, give me something fucking freaky or weird or different.
So you don't like Star Trek? They're all like very human aliens.
Yeah. like the ideas and the cool parts of Star Trek are of course the story, but the fact that every alien is just like a weird shaped head of a normal human is a
Yes.
bit of a bummer in comparison.
Yeah, based on the limitations of the day and whatnot. I'm talking about
I
TNG.
was about to say.
Yeah. Without getting
It
too much into
came down to, like,
sci-fi, because sci-fi is not my realm. But so you don't like creatures that are just human-like, right? So let me ask you this, because one of my favorite, not even recent creature, one of my favorite creatures in more recent times, as of my discovering of it, is I'm going to double check, Skulker. The Skulker is, at least in the old school, I don't know if they changed it in 5th edition, it's a bald, again, I'm bald, it's a bald person that, I think they're naked, but they chameleon into the backgrounds like a wallflower. So they look like cobblestone, and they just sneak around. They were people at one point that hid and were like really, what was, fuck, I'm gonna have to grab my monster manual. I think it said that they were people at one point. You can say hi to my cat. She sits in the back of my chair. Let me grab my monster manual quick.
Critter, look at that.
So, I think it was monster manual. I'm gonna guess it's 2. I don't think it's 1, but I'll check quick. No, I am wrong. It must be 2. It might be the Fiend Folio, actually. It's been a minute. Let me look. The Fiend Folio was very well known for being full of humanoid, like small humanoid, like goblin-like creatures. And it was slammed at the time because of that. But I particularly like the Fiend Folio. I really enjoy the Fiend Folio.
Yeah, I
it's
think
one of my favorite.
that made me think of like a humanoid monster I did think was pretty cool, because I'm trying to think about Skulker in 5e, and I think they are just like invisible, like claw assassin
Let's see.
dudes in 5e. Ooh.
Wait, I have to manually focus my webcam. You can kind of see him there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that all. Imelda, you're so cute.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
He's fused with. That's cool. It reminds me, because in 5e is where I started with D&D, because a friend had gotten me into it, just like on a whim, and I was like, oh wow, this is like now my favorite thing to do forever. And then I,
Now we're here.
into my hobbies. But I really liked the Grimlocks, which are like these
Oh, yeah.
cultists. If I remember, their whole lore is like their whole thing is that they're like cultists that are like changed by the magic they're imbued with, so like they blend in with like the stone in the area like you're talking about, but they don't have eyes. Those are pretty fun.
So, from your 5e knowledge, mites, M-I-T-E, they're like a fey-like creature in 5th edition, but in the old school, they were just kind of like goblins, albeit smaller, that like clubbed you and left you for dead at like they like throw nets on you and shit. They weren't really special, but now I think they've changed. I don't know too much about their new iteration or their more contemporary.
I'm trying to think if they are mites, because I think the mites became the Zavits.
Zabbits? Never heard of that one.
They're like let's see. If I'm trying to remember if that's how they're spelled, I'm gonna look it up really quickly. It might not be. But they're these little purple, like underdark, scriggly dudes, and they're like particularly like cowardice. So like you're saying, like throw nets on you and run away and stuff. So I wonder if they got switched around, because I do know a friend of mine had run some Pathfinder for some point. And there were mites
Pathfinder
in
mites.
that book.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember before I got into any kind of tabletop, when the only monster manuals I had was like the Piclopedia, from Pikmin, that kind of thing. The first like tabletop monster manual, I remember I looked at the Pathfinder monster manuals because I really liked how many there were. There were so many of them, and I found that really interesting. I didn't really know much about the difference between Pathfinder and D&D. I was just told it's like 3.5. And that was all that I was told to be. So I was like, okay, fine.
And you're like, I don't know what those words mean.
Well, I kind of did. I knew that it wasn't the most recent version. I knew that I wasn't really going to be playing the game. I just wanted to like look at the monsters and read about them. And because there were so many monster manuals for Pathfinder, I just decided, well, I'll just look at Pathfinder. This would ultimately be a decision I regret, and I actually ended up selling all those books to buy the old school books later down the line. And not that there's anything wrong with them, but, and this is a personal thing, I really do not like the style of Pathfinder art. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's what turned me off.
Yeah, as I began exploring different like editions of D&D and OSR games, and just the style, the old school black and white just grabbed me, and I love it. I cannot go back.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with it forever, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay being stuck with it forever. I'm a really big fan of...
I mean, and when you... Yeah. I think also when you find something like in your hobby and you're like, oh, look at this little niche thing, it's wonderful when you find that there are other people that like it, and there's other things like, oh, there's somebody who will just do black and white books like this. Like I love, like, Knave is so great. I can't wait to get my physical copy of the second edition.
I'm getting worried. I got my patches, but I was like, where the fuck is my book?
Yeah. Oh, you also did the... That's excellent.
Yeah, Knave 2E. Yep.
Yeah. But I'm really excited for that because I love Peter Mullen's artwork, and the fact that it's like all Peter Mullen stuff is just so good.
I'm excited to see it. I backed a few other indie tabletop stuff. I did Forgotten Ballad, which is like a Legend of Zelda top-down old school dungeon crawler, which I liked. I haven't played it, but I really like the art. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty small book. I got the hardback because I figured if I'm backing it, I may as well go for the hardback. I backed a game called... Shit, what is it? It hasn't arrived yet, but it's all about thieves, and they wear masks. It's Cloak and Dagger, not Cloak and Dagger. It's called like it might be Cloak and Dagger. It's something like that. It has wonderful art, and it's all about being thieves, which it's not my forte, but if the whole system...
Clerk and Dagger is right.
That's the one, Clerk and Dagger. Mm-hmm. I backed that a while ago, and I'm still waiting to see that. I'm excited about that one. What do you know about Troika? Because Troika creature designs and everything. The design of Troika is just wonderful. I'm in love with it.
Yeah, I had a friend who was just like almost exclusively he described himself as Troika pilled. Like it was just his favorite RPG. So a lot of the stuff I know about Troika is just from a very excited friend. But I like it. I'm always into weird RPGs. I love like niche, esoteric kind of stuff. Like I love Morkborg. I have Morkborg and Cyborg, and then I have the expansions for Morkborg up on my little RPG shelf there.
I'm going to say something you're gonna hate. It's not that I don't like Morkborg. It's not that I don't like it, but I think that its design, the very loud colors. I'm gonna say it. I think that it's flashy to an explosive extent. Like, I do not like it personally. Not that it's bad. Not that I think that it's a bad thing.
And it comes down to preference. Like, it's kind of divisive because some people love it for how. Because I love how weird that book is. That it's laid out as fucked up as it is. Which is funny because I have like really severe like dyslexia. Yeah. So you would think I would hate that book, but I love it.
The femur
I like
page.
that it's. Yeah, the femur page I thought was excellent. I liked it because I like watching people take creative liberties because a lot of the things that I see you can see when you're watching a movie or a show when there was clearly the enforcement or like the hand of an outside force. That's this is too weird. Dial it back. So Morkborg for me, I was like, oh, this was just someone going fucking crazy. I love this.
I've been saying this forever. No, what you just said resonates with me because I've been saying this forever. If anything I consume has to go through a focus group, dump it. I don't want to fucking look at it. I want
Yeah.
I want things that are a person's creative vision, something that somebody loves and has poured their heart into. It's okay if it's weird. It's
Yeah.
okay if it's not filtered. I want it to be that person's vision. That's important to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I appreciate that we're on the same vibe with that. But that's one of the things that I love about Morkborg. I loved the simplicity of it because at the time a bunch of like super hard, crunchy games, and I was sitting there as kind of like a slog, like because I would either help folks or playing their games, and there would just be like there's somebody who didn't know the rules or somebody who over knew the rules, and I looked at Morkborg and I'm like, this is great. You make a character in 5 minutes, and my biggest thing that was like so cool is. The game too. So when I got the book, I was like, "Hey, why don't we just do a session?" I literally just got the book in the mail 10 minutes ago, and so
Yeah.
she hops on. She lives in Australia, so we do all of our stuff online. It was the morning for her, and then I sent her the digital PDF, and we played it, and I learned how to run it in like the time it took for her to make a character.
Yeah.
And I was like, "This fucking rocks."
No wonder you like Knave. I think that Knave is a very similar.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never seen players that have I've never seen players have that much fun generating characters. Knave has a very, very strong randomly rolled character creator that inspires creativity. It inspires very unique characters. I mentioned my buddy Dylan. I don't know if you've ever seen White Tiger Tablecraft on Instagram or anywhere. He's on Discord and whatnot too. But he's a game writer. He made a game called Cauldron recently that's all about like swamp skirmish game, battle game. Very cool. But I bring him up
That's
because
up my alley.
it's called his publishing company. I don't know if it's technically it is a company. I don't know what they call it. They have a special word for it. It's Hill
Like an
Giant
LLC?
Games. I'll plug them for free because I love them. But
Nice.
I bring them up because Dallin generated a character in Knave when he was first playing it, and he has very little knowledge of, at the time at least, this was years ago, regarding like D&D, OSR stuff. Now he has more so, I think. But the character he generated was this. I might have told this story. I'm not sure. His name was Krebus, and he was a old fart that like worked in a tavern. He was like a tavern cook that was like retired and unfulfilled in his life. Has done nothing worth talking about, and he's just like really ugly and didn't have any redeeming qualities. And Dallin told me after he created Krebus, Krebus is my favorite RPG character of all time. I love Krebus. I would never have made Krebus if I wasn't forced to. I would never have went out of my way to generate this character. But now I'm really invested in this guy, and I really want to see him succeed. And Krebus's his one-off was he went into a sewer to recover, I think it was a ring that was flushed down the toilet. So he was trying to recover a ring so he could propose to his betrothed. And he ran into things like sewer thugs. That was from some zine somewhere. I don't remember which one. I really wish I did. It's in my collection somewhere. But sewer thugs are just like sewer cannibals essentially that like stink and they reek and they're covered in dirty rags and really ugly. And because Krebus was such an ugly guy, he kind of blended in with them, and that was like the crux. That was the crux of the one-off or the one-shot. But I'm digressing. The reason I bring up Dallin and Krebus is because the character design, similar to like monster design, I think that when you design a character to be badass, and awesome, I think it falls flat so frequently. It's not fun, and for me at least, fun subjective. My favorite characters that I've designed.
Well, I think...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No, you're good. It's Discord. It always happens.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Like, actually, recently I really was super happy because I had run a 2.5-year long campaign of Lancer, which is like a sci-fi badass mech game.
Okay.
And it's really detailed and it's very cool. And I made my own universe for it and I was really happy with it.
Yeah.
And I was running my original group, which were just some folks I hadn't seen in a while that were like, "Hey, you're DM." It's like it's it's still the pandemic, so
Yeah.
we're all looking for things to do and excuses. And they were like, "We were in this game." I'm like, "Yeah." So I run it for about 6 months with this first group.
Uh-huh.
And I was asking my friends to come in as guest characters, and a really good friend of mine came in as one. And I was like, "Oh, I can get you into the session today. You're this character who's secretly the son of a baron who's on this abandoned moon because he's running away from assassins, and you've lived on this abandoned radiating moon your whole life."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, this is such a cool character. I would not have made something like this." So he usually exclusively plays like old gritty men who have had it up to here. So to play like a hopeful
Yeah.
young man who's like coming up was not something he would have done before. And then my best friend who I played more with that I mentioned, I offered for her to jump in, and she turned out to be the sister of my friend Cameron's character.
Yeah.
And I kind of gave them these characters and these prompts kind of haphazardly, and I'm like, this will fit in. These characters already exist, and they blossomed into such cool characters that when the first group ended, I ran a 2.5-year campaign.
Wow.
But the whole campaign was all characters that came in as guest characters and were just people. I gave my friends these pre-generated existing NPCs. And for all of them, they were characters that they might not have played before.
Yeah.
But dude, it was one of the most fulfilling campaigns, and one where I loved the characters so much, and the players loved the characters so much. And like it worked so well that the idea for this next campaign is that I'm just gonna make like a list of vague NPC character shells and like hand them out and be like, populate whichever one you think is cool.
I think that'd be an important option. You don't necessarily have to rely on that, but I think that... Hello, by the way. I see somebody jumped in. I think that a lot of people, the entire point of coming into a session, a tabletop session, is playing as a character they want to create and design and place into your world. Obviously, some people struggle with this, right? I ran basic expert D&D for my family at Christmas once, none of which played D&D ever in their lives. My stepdad, my grandma played, and my stepdad, they were all giving it a go, My grandma made me promise there was nothing satanic in the game because she's an old satanic panic person. It's like, D&D is the devil, Like, don't worry, grandma, I promise, nothing satanic. And my stepdad created this character who was like, I want to be a hobbit. Okay, you can be a hobbit. He knows Lord of the Rings. My guy's named Frodo. Like that, you can't play Frodo. Well, I'm not. I just want to name him Frodo. That's fine. Ironically, Frodo had 17 strength, so Frodo is very strong. He just rolled really well. But I digress. I think that for some people that are challenged creatively, like my stepdad didn't really... He's just like, I'll just be Frodo. I'll just play like Frodo would. And that's all he could really think of, right? Whereas other people have a really distinct vision of a character they want to create. And if you say, here's your NPCs, play one, maybe that doesn't work for that specific party.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the group, because there's some groups that I definitely wouldn't do that with, or I know wouldn't be interested. But, we've been playing for years, so we had the conversations, like, how does this idea sound? And they're like, this sounds great, it's weird.
Oh, okay.
And, like, we trusted each other enough. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so used to one-shots that, like, the idea of running for more than a couple weeks is wild to me. And I only run for people that don't really play, like family members or friends that aren't friends from the hobby. They're just friends outside. So when they play, they're like, what dice is the D12? They pick up the D20, And I love that. I think they're some of the best players I've played with. I think it's when people have expectations to how tabletop games
I would
work.
agree there's something... I think that's absolutely... Yeah, no, I agree entirely that, like, new players are wonderful. That's why, when I run this public Saturday game for, like, 14 people, there are folks that have played for a couple years, folks that have only played at my table. And it's very funny. When one of the teenage kids, they came in, and they're one of my favorites just because they're so fun and weird. But they came in and was like, I played D&D with my friend, and there was like nobody there. I thought that they had canceled it. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Is there something wrong? They said, no, there was only like 3 people. I was like, that's normal? This is weird. What you're looking at is weird.
Yeah, 10
We aren't
people?
usually 14 people. Yeah, and I mean, that kind of stuff is very funny to me. that like some people are so turned off by the idea of the big group. Because like I'll talk to them like, oh yeah, I'd love to play. I was like, and I'm like, just to let you know, there will be like 12 people regularly there. And then they're like, I don't know, and I'm like, that's completely fair.
It's more of a social function. You don't get as much time. There's only one DM. You can't simulate 12 players all giving input at the same time. With 4 people, if you're lucky, if each person gets a shine once in a session. Oh no! I'm sorry, Warp Rush. I noticed you. Damn it! I was about to say hello. Damn. I did not mean to be rude to you. I'll send you a apology message DM later. In fact, I'll type one right now.
So in the zone.
You know what? I never intentionally am rude like that. Wow, this is a nightmare. I can't even type because my fucking screen recording thing. Alright, well, I'll attempt to fix that then. Damn it. I'll send my DM later. But anyway, yes, I find that for some people they appreciate the smaller groups so they get more attention, right? And not just attention, I think that it's more important for those people to have agency, whereas when you have a larger group, it might be better for people that don't have as much knowledge because they could kind of take a backseat and just be along for the ride and have a little bit of input occasionally.
Yeah.
I think that's good for some people.
Yeah, I mean, and every table's going to figure it out. And like the size and scope changes drastically how you do DM. Because one of my favorite things for a long time was running one-on-ones, just with a close friend or someone who's really interested in the game.
Yes.
And just doing one-on-one sessions, because I think one-on-ones are like some of the best way to learn how to be a DM. You learn so many good skills, and it helps you it helps you practice in so many spaces, and then like the stuff that you have to be participating for, that you just have to do, because there's parts of running a game that you just won't figure out until you do it.
Yes.
But one-on-ones are so good because they let you figure out so much, and it's easy, and it also feels great for a player. There's not a lot of times in life where you have the direct, undivided attention of someone else while you're doing something like creating art and like storytelling. So it's really cool.
I think that when I DM'd for youth in the past under various circumstances, and I don't just mean teenagers, I mean like younger kids, right? And I've DM'd really wacky types of one-offs where one of my favorites, I called this the Dimension Door, because back when I didn't know what the Dimension Door was as a spell, I thought it was a door that brought you to another dimension. So I wrote an entire one-shot where you essentially get to like this little farmyard area, very basic little introductory area, and you find a magical door that acts kind of like an elevator would, and every time you use it, it brings you to kind of like a mini area with a little gimmick, and it's a completely different box area that you can't really get out of, but it looks wider than it is, right? So one of them was like it might teleport you to a jungle, it's a very dense jungle, there's a tower, and then I densely populate that tower with interesting things, danger and weird items. So they could open the door, see the jungle, and be like, fuck this, shut the door, let's go somewhere else. And they could randomly generate a different place they go to. They'd roll a d20 table to see where they go. If you roll the same one twice, something bad happens depending on what the one you rolled twice was. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because when I was DMing this for a literal child who didn't really know much about any tabletop, anything D&D, it was just having fun, like choose your own adventure style. One of those random areas was I'm very fond of clowns in the circus. Clowns don't really fit in D&D. Yes. In my D&D, clowns fit. So he opened the door, and it was the big top. And there are clowns, and like a lion, and there's a crowd. And his entire session took place interacting with clowns as people thought he was part of the performance. And he had a blast. He was cracking up. It was an incredible one-off session. But D&D is different depending on the your population, your perception. I mentioned this a little earlier regarding perception, but when you're talking to a party and it's describing something, whether it be a creature design or just any description of anything in the environment, each person is going to interpret it differently based on their experiences, their biases, etc. Like the example I gave earlier when I was talking to myself, because Noah was in the call for about 45 minutes, was that's okay. But my earlier example was that if you try to explain a creature's bark as a dog's bark, a person that grew up with a very small dog might assume it's like a Shih Tzu's bark, versus somebody who grew up with a pit bull might think, that's a stereotypical bigger dog. I don't mean to make it sound meaner because I think they have a very negative, vibe, connotation, whatever. But they think that this barking is louder, is more aggressive, right? So taking that into account, especially when you're DMing for 17 people, right? I know that's an exaggeration, but when you're DMing for that many people, if you describe a creature in a particular way, it's going to read differently to each person, unless you are extremely precise, which you shouldn't be, right? Unless they're observing it with a microscope. You only give as much information as you need to, otherwise you're explaining too much. And things like a person's meta-knowledge takes over. If they see a chest in the middle of the room and there's a blood stain by the chest, even if their characters don't know that it's a mimic, they're going to say, oh, it's probably a mimic, I gotta be careful. Then the player goes, oh, I'm going to be careful. Why? I don't know. There's blood. Whatever, right? Yeah. Meta-knowledge. That's why it's important to use weird monsters to describe creatures in a strange way. An idea I had for a mimic that I should probably, now that I'm talking about it, I haven't thought about this in years. It's a type of mimic that instead of I think it was the way that it senses you had these long antennae, like fine whiskers that come out from the planks, the cracks between the planks. And it's and a 360 cool. Around it, like these whiskers. So when things move by, almost like a Venus flytrap's little hairs, it could tell where the thing is in the room. And you wouldn't notice this unless 1 in 6 chance you happen to notice these faint, thin things you're brushing up against, like cobwebs, and then it lunges out at you from across the room, right? When you're pretty far away, because these are long, 15, 20 feet long whiskers. But it's really delicate. It takes a while to form these whiskers, so they have to grow over a period, whatever, right? I can think about this all day. I can't model it, damn it. I can't model these fine whiskers, unfortunately. But I think that it's such a fun concept of...
Yeah, it's really cool. I like that.
Imagine describing this to a player, though, right? Use it.
Yeah.
But I think that when describing creatures, you take into account other players are going to perceive it differently based on their experiences, and we're not going to be able to predict those things because we don't know their life stories, right? We haven't lived in their shoes. I don't know if you know this, but I am a therapist intern, so a lot of this is coming from narrative therapy concepts.
That's really cool. I did not know that.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
But the idea of each player having a different experience based on not just experience in the game, but perceiving things differently based on their life experiences and based on the way that they, obviously an arachnophobe is going to act differently to a spider or arachnid-based enemy than otherwise. Even if they're good, role players and their player isn't their character isn't an arachnophobe, but they're likely still going to act a little more cautiously, right? Just because that's in their nature too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been painting this carrion crawler.
People...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I said the way that people perceive characters is always really fun to me, and the way that they have these particular ideas, because sometimes I will do art. Oh, howdy.
Hi, Warprush. I sent you a DM. I apologize. I talked like you weren't there for about 3 minutes. That was not my intention. Can you hear me okay?
I'm here to pirate copies of Tanner's game and put them on Parfait.
My free games? Don't pirate them and distribute them everywhere. No, absolutely do. I don't care. You can do anything you want with my games. It doesn't matter. Illegally download my games. Seed them on the Pirates Bay.
I'm fucking seeding 60 torrents right now.
Oh, are you?
God damn it! Is it just, does it still say I'll have a fucking background noise? I don't have my speakers on anymore.
Okay.
Do you hear an echo?
I gotta tell you right now. Let me show you what my computer looks like. So this is
I've seen your room tangentially.
Hold on. I'm pulling the webcam out. Okay, wait. Wrong way. So this is the fan. Wait, shit. Okay. This is the fan. I'm gonna focus this. This is the fan. This is the computer.
Fucking
sick.
Milk. It's in a bird cage.
It's in a bird cage. The hard drive is zip tied to the side of the computer.
That's insane.
That's
I
wicked.
love it.
It was built out of my friend's old Bitcoin mining hardware that's been like fried over years of trying to mine Bitcoin back when that was cool, and an old desktop that bricked of mine that I built when I first started college. So it's
Do you
a surprise
want a
it's working
cake?
at all.
I have so many cases. I will mail you a case out of spite.
No, I actually built when I first built the PC. It was in this case that I fucking hated. So what I did was when it died, I was joking with my friend. Originally, it wasn't in a birdcage. It was in a shopping cart, a little one, the little ones that you push, the tiny ones that you could put on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't get it to boot up. I don't know what was wrong with it. I think we ended up swapping the power supply or something. I don't know. It had a faulty something, and it would boot up for a second and then just shut off. So this one works to an extent. I'm actually surprised it hasn't blue screened yet. It blue screens about once every 3 hours. So it's probably getting to that point. I had to reset it entirely once. Re-download Windows Movie Maker. It was a nightmare.
Windows Movie Maker of what year?
I'm using just the old one. I've been using the
Are you? I feel like you're running like XP or something.
No, it's Windows 10. I'm running Windows 10. I just like using really maybe I'm
I went to
really
a convention.
Yeah.
I went to this con a couple months ago, and they had a LAN party room that was just like a bunch of computers made from like IT specialists, like garbage dumps, and they were all running XP, and they all had like Half-Life Arena, Quake 3,
Oh, that's awesome.
Halo Combat Evolve on them, and it was so just
I'll
like
tell you a
30
quick
people in
story.
like a convention.
When I was in high school, I was one of the few people who we had Halo Combat Evolved on a flash drive, and it was hosted. It was just the multiplayer, and it was hosted by like GameSpy or something. But what was cool is you just
Yeah,
copy
I
and
remember
pasted
that.
it. Yeah, you just copy and pasted the multiplayer onto a flash drive, gave it to a friend, and they could just plug it into their, the computer lab computer and just play Halo CE multiplayer. So what we would do is we would just keep copy and pasting it on other flash drives and giving it to people. We became popular, quote unquote. We were losers, but we became popular because we were doing this until every computer in the school bricked at the same time while we were playing like a huge LAN thing. And I think like 2 kids got suspended. My name never got out, so I was one of the lucky ones. But the principal made talked about whoever's playing Halo, I'll find you, essentially. So I have fond memories of Halo Combat Evolved at school.
I remember playing on the family computer. It was the single player only had one level. That was the silent cartographer, and then the multiplayer was just Blood Gulch.
That's
But
the
all
only
you
level
needed
need,
was
baby.
Blood Gulch.
That's the only level you need. Blood Gulch.
Yeah, possibly one of the best designed multiplayer levels in any game. God damn.
Next to what is it? Two Worlds from was it Unreal? Two Worlds where it's like the 2 towers and like the 2 bridges going across.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Or 2 Fort. TF2 2 Fort's also up there. That one's really good. Dwayne, if only Dwayne was here.
Oh, yeah.
Dwayne's an avid TF2 player. He could school us on map design. Now, let me ask you quick, Warp Brush. You could use your real name if you want to. I'm recording this if you don't know. It's going on my YouTube.
Oh,
Let me ask you.
I'm Jimmy. I'm just
Jimmy, okay. Just double checking. I don't know. Some people aren't comfortable with that. What is your
Sure.
favorite creature design? Like, all time, any property. What is your favorite and why? I've been asking all the people that jump on this question.
Okay. This for me, this is a very nostalgic piece. The Ray Harryhausen skeletons from Jason and the Argonauts.
Didn't we bring this
Growing
up?
up,
recently? You
we
were just
had-
saying that. Keep going, sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, really?
Look at that.
So
Yeah.
growing up, I had like a VCR, and we had like 4 movies. We had like the original Star Wars. I'm counting the trilogy as one. The Mummy and Jurassic Park and Jason the Argonauts that my dad like never returned from Best Buy, so it just had or not from Hollywood Video, so it just had the Hollywood Video like logo on it. So I watched Jason and the Argonauts like a ton, and I highly recommend it. It still really holds up, and the stop motion for the skeletons just works perfectly.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw that when I think I saw that like in school. Like it was one of the movies they carted out and made us watch. And it was
Yeah,
really
because-
memorable.
because it-
like,
It's like the 60s, so it's like PG, even though there's like blood and like stabbing and stuff.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned Hollywood Video. I still have a copy of Superman 64 on the N64 with a Blockbuster sticker saying "Property of Blockbuster." One of
Yeah.
the all-time worst games, Superman 64. Still have that Blockbuster sticker on it. Funny.
There's somewhere around here.
So your favorite creature
I believe
design
you
is
might-
the skeletons from Jason the
Rubber.
Argonauts?
Jason and the Argonaut skeletons. They're just very like, you know, stop motion doesn't work for things that are organic, right? Like, I mean, Harryhausen is great, you know, but whatever.
Yeah.
But like when you see like a humanoid giant walking around, it feels kind of like staticky. But with the
Funky.
skeletons, it just really works.
It gives a comedic vibe. I think that's what inspires things like the Dark Souls skeleton when you look at how goofy they are. They're like inherently goofy. I think that
Yeah.
although maybe he wasn't really aiming for a comical skeleton, what was it? Army of Darkness has like stop motion kind of goofy skeletons too, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a minute.
Yes.
since
I
I've seen that movie.
Yes,
Army of
same-
Darkness.
But I think
Same
that,
sort of vibe.
Yeah, I think that it all stems from Great Grandpa Jason the Argonauts. Unless there's a predecessor that makes goofy skeletons. I prefer my skeletons to have a comedic flair to them. I think it adds another element. But I'm
Yeah,
biased.
they're wacky guys.
I think that with my fantasy, like any type of fantasy for me, like the world building that I do, I love cartoony fantasy. I want to know your perspective, both of you, on cartoony fantasy. And I just mean like high fantasy. Imagine role playing like not straight up cartoon characters, Tom and Jerry with mallets, but like you could think Adventure Time. You could cut a dragon in half. You could bisect one, but it's not gory. It's cut in half. It doesn't really matter, right? You're not looking. It's still being shown to youth, but you're still
Yeah,
cutting it in half. You know what I mean?
I think it's lovely. I love good cartoony fantasy because my whole thing is like when I run games, I'm like I want each and every single one of them to be their own existing thing. So sometimes there's really cartoony. I know my last D&D game that I ran for my group that I was talking about, it's like 14 people, was
Yeah.
very cartoonishly silly. Their main NPC companion was a skeleton janitor named Howie who wanted nothing to do with the group, but they kept kidnapping him because they thought he was funny. And so his entire thing was like, please, I just want to go home and sweep. And then it turned out at the end that he was secretly one of the 3 liches that were like the most powerful of this ancient coven. And he was like, I've been trying to lay low and protect this place, but you guys keep bringing me into your nonsense.
Was
but,
that
like, you know,
like
he-
writing after the fact though? He wasn't originally a lich. You wrote that later, right?
Oh no, he was originally the Lich. That was going to be the whole joke.
Oh,
The whole
okay,
thing was like they
okay.
were going to meet him session one day. He was going to be like howdy, and then like occasionally pop back up, and then like they just took it through the entire campaign, so it was even funnier. And then
Okay,
also
I
part where it's
respect
just
that
like, I
more.
care about you guys. Yeah. It ended up being something very different, but it was really funny because Howie was just going to be this unsuspecting character, but then he was just like the really funny straight man of this like 14-person D&D group because everyone was kind of wacky. So he was like, "Can you people just be normal? The reason why these elves think that you're crazy is because you're acting crazy." But it was so much fun.
Speaking of cartoony fantasy and liches, that's another character design that I love. I love the lich from Adventure Time.
Oh, I just quoted him in one
that's-
of my posts. I painted a lich recently, and I quoted, was it, "You are strong, child, but I am death. I am the end." You know, that quote. The lich. I have a T-shirt with the lich's face on it, actually.
I painted the lich and the crystal apple on my skateboard in high school. I was
Oh,
just
really?
like,
That's awesome.
I was like, this guy's fucking sick. Yeah,
Yeah, the
he's
lich
just
is
such like a
great
classic,
design.
fun design.
Yes, it's fun because it's like the antithesis of the whole show, right? It's the extinction of life. It's not just killing to kill or be violent. It just doesn't want existence. It wants to snuff out life. And I think that that's so it stands against the color of the show. He's like black and white. You know, he's very desaturated. Have you ever seen the This reminds me of have you ever seen that clip from this old claymation movie called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, where they meet Satan? You ever seen this?
I can't say that I have, but I'm a little intrigued now.
Okay, YouTube this. You don't have to watch it a second, but YouTube, type in like Tom Sawyer Satan, and you'll see like a black void with what looks like a suit of armor holding a mask for a face. And it's like a 5-minute...
I have seen that. I didn't know that was from. Yes.
Yeah, it's from like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer or something. It's not Huckleberry Finn. It's one of those old fucking stories.
Oh, I think it's Adventures of Mark Twain or something.
Mark
weird
Twain,
like that.
yes, fuck me. Thank you. We got there eventually. The Adventures of Mark Twain. Satan.
Look at that.
YouTube it. It is an incredible.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You have seen this, okay.
Yes, I have seen this. I've seen this, yeah.
It reminds me a
I
bit
think
of
also. I think what also made that character so good was the fact that they went, "Get me Ron Perlman," because his voice was so excellent, and it's just
I
fabulous.
could not believe
The-
Ron Perlman was the Lich. I could not. I saw that somewhere, like, featuring Ron Perlman, and I laughed. I went, "Ha, that's a good one." And I looked, like, oh shit, it actually is Ron Perlman. I just didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah, extremely talented individual.
Of that same era for Adventures of Mark Twain, I think like children's shows, especially there were so many good ones that came out of the 90s that like were impressionable, like Wishbone. Do you guys ever watch Wishbone?
I have not seen that one. No.
He was a little terrier, and he like famous like books, but they're like very well acted, and it kind of feels like a Star Trek Next Generation holodeck experience because
We were
it's just
talking
like
about that earlier,
it's just
too.
like a massive like costume thing, and they're like so cute and they're so well done. He does like Cyrano de Bergerac, but he's like a little dog. It's
Like
very
in Star
like Reading
Trek.
Rainbow. Yeah, Reading Rainbow is like I feel like it's all like the same PBS like public studio actors that just got shuffled around to like Zoom and Arthur and Wishbone and Reading Rainbow.
What was
All
the one
like
with
Canadian and US collabs.
What was that monkey one? There was a monkey that there was like claymation.
Oh, Zaboomafoo!
Fucking Zaboomafoo.
Yes.
Oh my god.
It's me,
Memories.
It's a boomafoo.
That monkey is dust in the wind now. He's fucking dead as a doornail. Rest in peace, Abumafoo.
No, it was actually a she, and she only passed away a couple years ago. They live like
What?
30, 40 years or something.
Zabumafoo
Lemurs.
lived 40 years? Holy shit, Zabumafoo's older than I am? What? That's fucking wild. Rest in peace. Pour one out for Zabumafoo.
She died in 2014, but she has, yeah, she was born 1994, and she had little babies, and the babies are like still alive.
You said 1994?
She's got kids. 1994, yeah.
Yeah.
She's a year older than I am. I was born in 95.
Before my time.
She's a year older than
Oh,
me.
really? I was born 96. I feel like you're.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like you're an older personality than a 95 kid.
It's because I don't fit in anywhere. My entire life I
Well, hey,
never
listen.
fit in.
All I know is
until
that
now.
me and you vibe, and that you're
Oh
invited
yeah,
to my
no.
table.
This whole
Because
community.
we spent like 30 minutes talking about Pikmin, and I was like, my God, he gets it.
This entire community, the hobby community, is the first place I fit in. I've said this multiple times in different places, but it's the first time I felt like I actually have a community of people that not just like understand me, but like I feel comfortable talking with, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm not just wasting their time or wasting my time. Not that my time's valuable or anything, but I don't know. I feel
There's
like
no pretending in the hobby community.
Yeah, like I used to play.
I mean,
Magic
there's
the
lots of
Gathering.
pretending, but
Well, sure.
Mhm.
I used to play Magic the Gathering, for example, and like I met some fine people in that community, right? That being said, it was a dead end for me. Like, it just wasn't. It wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for creative expression, and I was trying to get that out of deck building. And it got me so far, but once I started with like, I got into Warhammer armies before I got into D&D and just painting for fun and hobbying for fun. And I really enjoyed the expression of making your own army and making my guys, right?
Mm.
Actually, I don't know how many people know this yet, but are either of you going to Adepticon this year? In Chicago? Adepticon?
I am yet to go to Adepticon.
Really? Well, if you guys
Yeah,
go,
I have a lot of.
you let me know.
There's a lot of miniature conventions. Luckily, where I am, they're mostly like old head grognards doing like historicals.
Yeah.
So I would love to go to Adepticon. It's on my list, but I have stuff around here.
I'm a Milwaukee native. Well, not native, but I live in Milwaukee, so it's pretty close to me.
Mm.
If you end up going, you let me know. This year is going to be a big one. I bring it up because I'm going to be getting rid of an entire table's worth of terrain and my entire Kilocan 40k army. I
Oh,
think
wow.
I'm just
Nice.
going to trade it away to a different hobbyist that's going to get some use out of it. But we will see. When we talk about things like, I think I asked you a little earlier regarding creature design that you hate, and I'm interested in hearing what your least favorite creature design is. Because I talked about mine. Yeah, what's your least favorite? It could be a trope. It doesn't have to be a specific thing, but like, what's your least favorite type of creature? Or I guess trope would work too.
That's interesting. I don't often look at something and go like, I don't like that.
I do all the time.
I feel like luckily, like for most fantasy work, people tend to put a lot of their heart into it because we're all like nerds and we want to put something else out to other nerds. Like,
Yeah.
if it's like a Hollywood monster or like a card art or something, it's like, yeah, there's gonna be like a big buzz, and like the studio is gonna be like, you have to make it look like this. But I think most people are still going to try their best. That being said, I never liked Eastern dragons. I don't
Really?
like. Okay.
Interesting.
I don't like when dragons have fur. I don't like when those like it doesn't have to be dragons, but I don't like when like reptiles. If something is like scaly and then it
Yeah.
also has like fur, I don't like it. Sometimes I've seen designs for like orc dragons and they'll be like kind of like apish. They'll have like scales and then like tufts of fur. Or like the classic Chinese dragon. I think it's totally cool in that atmosphere, but then like when you like make it like hyper realistic and you do like all like the leathery skin and the scales, but then it also has like fluff on it, I'm just like no. Like no, it's not a mammal, it can't have fur. Yeah, I know it's a mythical animal and it can be whatever it wants, but yeah, okay, I don't like when there's fur and scales together.
So it's hard for you to do suspension of disbelief, I'm hearing?
I can suspend disbelief as long as it's like lizard people with boobs. It's like okay, I can suspend disbelief.
That is a whole conversation.
Venom sacs. They're venom sacs. God.
Venom sacs. Okay.
Somebody
No,
get
if you're
me,
a dragon, if you're a reptile, you don't have fur.
I've got a cheesecake like lizard woman with giant boobs 3D printed model somebody sent me. I don't do 3D printed models like ever. I don't hate them, but I've seen so many shitty ones that like
Yeah.
I just don't like them. And this thing is just sitting in like one of my trays, and I'm gonna pawn it off on somebody at Adepticon. I think I'm gonna like sneak it in their backpack. I don't know what to do with it. I'm not gonna paint it, that's for sure.
3D printed stuff has kind of saved my ass a couple times. Like, I really like the Chaos Troll models from Warhammer Fantasy, and I have a couple of them, but they're all missing. I have enough to make one altogether, but then I'm missing like 2 other heads and like 3 other weapons, and I can't find, I can't go on eBay and buy just one head. Someone might list it, but it's very rare. I can only get like a box set of them sealed for like $120, or maybe someone auctions one off for like $30-40. But luckily, a lot of resin printers, a lot of people in Colts 3D will scan a whole old model and then be like, here's the exact. Be like, oh, thank you. Now I can print off just the head or arm that I need.
That's great. Yeah, I think like
Head
the
swaps.
accessibility.
Head swaps. Fuck it. You don't have the head?
Yeah.
That's fine. Head swaps.
Someone,
Magic.
when I got them, someone had put like a Skaven Rat Ogre head on it, and it looked cool and fine. But I really want the original because that's
Okay,
just
fair.
what I think is cool.
Fair. I feel
No, like at the
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was about to say that, like, because you sit there and like there's like this idea with 3D printers as a whole that people are just like, well, now people are just making things that you wouldn't pay 2 cents for because you just can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that happens like, oh, let me make these ridiculous things, but I think like that there is a level of accessibility that is appreciated when you have 3D printers, right? Like, because like. I know that there are people that are working to like put like Heartbreaker minis on the web, miniatures that were sculpted by like a company that doesn't exist anymore. So there would be no way that you could get it as soon as they run out. So I think that 3D printers have their place. I just don't think that everyone should be like everything should be 3D printed because number one, resin already isn't a great thing to paint with or work with on a miniature scale, at least in my experience and how I feel about it. That was most of the point I was just going to talk about. Like that there is these wonderful little bits where you realize, oh shoot.
I give this spiel.
Mm-hmm.
I give this spiel to friends who don't ask, and I just am over-explaining things to them. I'll take models and be all like, okay, this is like a hand-sculpted model, and like this is like a 3D printed model, right? Not literally, but kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll be all like, okay, see how like this one was designed with perspective in mind. It might have a little more of a static pose because it has to kind of obey the laws of physics. You're not going to get a lot of like dancing, jumping, and flowing robe stuff. You can. We've had a lot of technology improvements, but most of the time when it's hand sculpted, it has to then be cast, and you have to think about making it realistically. And it's also pretty sturdy because these are game pieces. I mean, not everyone plays with them, but for the most part, they're game pieces. When you get into printed stuff, you get all of this like extra flowiness to it, and they can look really good as display pieces, but they can be an utter bitch to put together, and if they break, it's gonna look terrible if you ever decide to, like, super glue them back. And they're just not designed with, like, the paintability in mind. So the Nulzer's Marvelous Miniature series from D&D and Pathfinder, they have like official licensed minis. You might have seen them.
Yeah.
It's a good deal. It's like 2 for $5. But they come pre-primed, and they're really thickly pre-primed, and they're all designed digitally. And on the back of the box, it doesn't show a painted example. It shows
It's just
like
the 3D JPEG.
It just shows you, yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
whatever they had in like AutoCAD or Blender or whatever, right? And it's like, I know that you don't want to show the actual model once it's painted because it doesn't look as good. Because you design this purely digitally without any mind to people actually painting this, even though it's sold as a painted project. There's no like official painted pictures of them.
Yeah, it's. I think that the 3D element, like being able to like scale it down, right? Because like it looks great when you've got it propped up on your big monitor or on your like really nice Wacom tablet or whatever you're using to sculpt. I've never sculpted digitally before. However, I think I want to try it at some point. Very sweetly, my brother got it out of a blind box with some friends. But I have this really nice old 1991 Chaos War.
Oh yeah, I got a couple of those. I love them.
Oh, I love these old Hammer guys. My favorite are always like the 90s era fantasy miniatures. I love them. I'm a square base guy. I actually have put a bunch of the miniatures that I'm going to be using for the game I do publicly on square. And look at that, high five, square bases. My brother makes fun of me for it sometimes because he's much more of a modern gamer. He actually has finished and painted his Warhammer army though, so I completely submit to any kind of things he has because Chaos guys are there and they're not all the way done. They're soon to be done though.
Do you know why I hate square bases?
But tell me.
I hate square bases because I want to rotate a model and have it look like it's not facing the wrong way, and I get anal about like centering. So you have a square base. If it's not centered looking directly in the middle, you're gonna tell. But when it's a round base, I mean, I'm working with an oval right now, which, whatever. But when you're working with like a round base, you could twist it so it's looking at somebody, and you don't feel as, you know, blocky.
I get that, and that makes sense design-wise. For me, I just like them because I'm like, my thought with a miniature is that like a miniature is a snippet in like this character's time and space and whatever it is, right? So like, you know, I'm not that bothered when someone has grass on their base, like on a stone or dungeon tile like surface.
Oh yeah,
For
sure,
some
I'm the same
people,
way. Yeah.
That's so I like it that like, oh, this is just them in their space in whatever little time, almost like a three-dimensional picture. I just like the square bases because I love the aesthetic of like the older tabletop minis because to me they just had so much more personality. And some of my first mini stuff that I was really getting into, I worked and lived in New York for a couple of years. And I went to this wonderful little shop called The Complete Strategist, and it was run by these guys. There were just a bunch of old head gamers, but really lovely, quite a few of them. A couple of times I got some of them actuallys, but you know. But it was a really cool space, but it was all retro stuff. And of course they got new products, but it was the kind of place where it was really packed. It was an old building in New York, so like some of the hallways where you're walking to the products, you'd have to walk to the side.
Yeah.
But so when I was getting into minis, I was looking at these, you know, really cool classic old Hammer minis, or like, you know, these Heartbreaker mini series that don't exist anymore. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And there were these guys that were painting these old minis, and so always there was this old guy named Don who was really lovely to meet. And he was just painting away his old Warhammer minis. And he had like some from the 90s that he had forgotten. He was like, I forgot this in my attic, and now we gotta paint them all. And so he was doing it, and he was showing me like his little paint techniques. And it was really cool, and it was a really lovely just interaction because the only other person that I knew that did minis was my brother Thomas. So it was very cool to just kind of see that difference in approach. So I really loved, I grew this instant infatuation and this desire, this nostalgia for a scene and a time I wasn't even in, which there's a word for, but I don't know it.
Oh, it's like isn't it like a German word?
No.
I feel like I knew this.
I feel. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. I don't remember the word.
No, I feel the same. Like I love the late 80s, early 90s stuff. Like I did get into gaming in the early 2000s through my dad, but he only did like historical, like 12 millimeter, 15 millimeter, really tiny guys where you have like over and
Trays.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he only did like Napoleonics. So I remember going to the game stores with him and seeing the Warhammer stuff, and he got me some Warhammer 40K stuff around like 5th edition, Assault on Black Reach, and I got into that. But I didn't want to get into Warhammer Fantasy because I was like, no, I'm already into Warhammer 40K. I can't get into Warhammer Fantasy. If I want to get into a fantasy game, I'll get into the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth game. And as a kid, I didn't actually know that that was also Games Workshop.
That's funny.
But but when I got them, I also didn't know that they would be 25 millimeter instead of 28 millimeter or 20 millimeter, whatever they are. So I was like, oh, sometimes I'll like put them next to like my D&D miniatures, but they're always like slightly smaller. But I paint all my Warhammer Fantasy stuff. I paint all my Warhammer Fantasy stuff with the brown base. I love the Goblin green base, but I really like the light brown edge base. Well, sometimes you'll see in the old White Dwarfs, even at the same time as the Goblin green base, they'll have like the brown base. So this way I can play 5th edition or 8th edition or whatever edition that I'll never end up actually playing. And they can kind of look all together.
I fucking hate scale. I do not like scale. I don't want to care about scale. I don't want it to affect any of my hobby. When I see a model, I just click it into like what 28 millimeter scale. I literally like I've got this giant lobster toy. You can't really see it. I'm gonna paint it as a giant fucking lobster because
that's
whatever.
badass.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
I want to fit here. Here's another good example. This is a weird model I bought off eBay a while ago. It is, I'm going to focus this. So it's a D&D model of this knight. You can kind of see the weird helmet. He or she is like wearing a thong, but it's it's a very strange model. It's a giant like sword with faces all over the pauldrons. So I'm thinking like, yeah, it says Crystallite. Heroes 1984 Crystallite on the bottom. I don't know. It's a D&D model, supposedly. I don't know what the fuck it is. I think it's just like a display model. But I want to use it as a Titan. A giant, massive armored Titan. Yeah. How fun that would be. I don't want to... Whenever I see something, I just want to click it into the same scale. I have this computer wizard tchotchke. It's like giant compared to... I don't know. Here's like an orc, right? In comparison. It's a huge wizard with a giant sack of books. So I'm going to make it a giant wizard. Fuck it. Does that have rules in AD&D? No. I'll make rules. That's the game.
But you're in charge.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fun of the game. Don't be controlled by rules, right? They're a framework to build your own system, your own world out of. But don't let that cage you.
I forget who said it. I think it was Rick Priestley or one of the original founders of Games Workshop or whatever, but he was writing in White Dwarf in like the late 80s, early 90s, and he was like, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people care about like the meta and the rules, and that kind of makes me scared. Like, I hope that we don't get into like people, trying to really get into the rules opposed to just like enjoying the narrative of the game.
Telling. That is telling, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is scary, man. I'm sure you both have seen the famous, at this point, within our hobby at least, image of the spirit of the game. And it's the dragon talking about the dwarves, and it says, what's the right answer? Do you charge the dragon with your last dwarf because it's what the dwarf would want to do? The slayer would want to charge a dragon. but you'll lose the game in the process. Or does the Slayer wait and stall and you win the game? But the Slayer would never do that in the lore. What's the correct answer? And the White Dwarf article says they're both correct depending on the context, right? If you're playing a competitive event with a person that's wanting to play competitively, you're going to competitively play. You're not going to throw the game just for a gag, for the narrative, if your opponent doesn't give a shit. But if you're playing a narrative game, play the narrative, role play it, right? Even if it's not tactically sound, fuck it. When I played any kind of war game, I don't play it strategy-wise to win. I play it I role play how they would want to play. If I'm playing Tyranids in 40k, they're gonna eat everything. That's what they want to do. They're gonna play kind of stupid. That's fine. That's how I enjoy the game. That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's obvious it's meant to be fun. You know, you get into that spirit, and it also it's something that like helps so much get people into the hobby. Because I'm trying to remember who the quote is by, struggling remembering it. But anyway, it's something that really was like just felt profound to me. Was the best way to learn to love something is to watch someone else love it. You know, and it's
true.
Very
true.
It's infectious when you do it. Like I wanted other friends to play tabletop games because I had a D&D group when I was working in New York that I really liked, and I had Warcry had just come out, the Warhammer like small scale skirmish fantasy game, and I had saved up to pre-order the box, and I got the box, and I had painted them. I'd stayed up like 2 nights in a row, and I was working both of those nights. Pardon me. And I would just sat there, and I was like, I know that you've never done this before, but this shit's so cool. And they were like, I've never done it or had any desire, but if you like it, let's try it. And it was really fun because I had some friends that were, now into skirmish games because of that. And I couldn't have gone, well, the rules and the characters are really deep. But I just went, listen, let me tell you about how much I love this. And, it gets infectious. So it's one of those things where truly the best answer is whatever's the most fun. Like, for that game I run for that big group, because it's hard for me to grid or scale things, because you have to do something different with that many people. The way the game has to be designed is completely different. I'm just like, all right, everything's rulers, everything's inch based. And so I've got, player characters that are on, 28s, 25s. One of them is really small, so they're on a 22. And everyone's got like 5 or so inches of movement. And like, technically some of them, or some of the players or some of the bad guys have advantages because they're like on slightly bigger bases or whatever. But it's not something that ever bothers the player, and it's not something that bothers me.
Exactly.
It's one of those things, right, where when you're running a game and they're like, "Oh, you're one." There's lots of times where they've been like just less than an inch off, and I'm like, "Yeah, that is," because that's
exactly.
Fun.
But if you're biasing it, that stops it. Have you ever wanted, they want it so bad, and then you kind of bend the rules because, you kind of fudge it a little bit, and then it's like, oh, you can't compromise, especially when you're doing old school. I compromised one time, and after the fact, people told me, I think it was a character that should have died, and I was like, oh, they're at, I think it was they were at 0 health, or they were at 1 health, and I was like, does that kill them, or are they knocked out? I don't remember. I think it was 0 health, and I said, I think in some systems it says, they're knocked unconscious until they're at negative health, whatever, right? And in basic experts, no, they're fucking dead. So I was like, you can be knocked out as long as you're at 0. But if you go to -1, you're dead.
Yeah.
And after the fact, the player told me, you know what? In hindsight, I should have just died. And you know what? It would have been a more monumental moment. It would have been a memorable moment that people could have grieved for that character. It would have mattered, right? But instead, it was just it kind of felt like a cop-out.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes to part with that situation and realizing as a DM when's the time to do it and when's it not. Because, I think fudging is a part of a game because sometimes the dice don't tell an interesting story. Sometimes you are literally just repeatedly critting and could possibly kill the party. So it's that waiver right, and I think I lean more towards that with that group because there are 14 people some days, and when
Yeah.
it does get to your turn, you don't want to do nothing. Like I've changed a lot of the rules to, especially when I was playing D&D, because sometimes there are enemies that are hard to hit. Is that like you hit every time, but depending on how high or low you rolled, affected the result. If you rolled like sub 8 or sub 10, depending on how hard the enemy was to hit, they'd get like a reaction or get to do more damage because they're like spiteful of the person who hit them, um, and that made it interesting and it was a lot different. But I looked at the fact like these people are waiting for pretty long turns, and even though I think to myself I'm pretty fast and I'm able to move the groups because I have experience as a game master, I'd want something to happen for everybody that plays. So it definitely depends on the party because sometimes absolutely you fudge and you're like, I think I took something away from that story that could have been great. But I think that's just something that comes to the experience of running games.
It's an art. It's like we're not a computer system. If they wanted to play a computer game, we'd all be playing Ultima Online or fucking Baldur's Gate. That's what I said 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's an art. So it's like up to us as the human game system to decide. When am I going to fudge a number? When am I going to be a hard ass? What do I think is going to be that? And it's not something that can be so methodical. Otherwise, just go play a computer game.
I think that the more we talk about this, the more I'm going to die on this hill. I think I'm going to stop entirely with fudging because I want it. I want to tell the story that the chance tells. When I played Baldur's Gate 3, right? I played it recently because my girlfriend was playing it. And she told me, oh, this setting is on. It's called Karmic Dice. And I went, what the fuck is that? Well, the dice aren't random. It sees if you fail a bunch and then it lets you win one. And I went, that's fucking stupid. Turn that off. I don't want that. I want it to be random. That's the point of D&D. It's random. And I thought about this, like, well, it's like a DM fudging a roll. I don't want that. I want to fail. I want there to be... If you just succeed when it's important and there's bias, whether the DM is feeling bad for you or they like you or they're flirting with you or fucking whatever, right? It's... It breaks the game. I'd rather there be 100 shitty stories than one really memorable one, just because the dice happen to be fucked up, right? That brings me to another topic. I have fucked up dice. I have dice that I bought from weird areas that, like, when I was at a convention, I bought an entire polyhedral dice set that were miscast, so they have, like, air bubbles that are, like, a chunk of the die is just missing. And obviously they're not balanced because there's missing bubbles from it. But I decided it would be a cursed dice set. So if a player got cursed, here's your fucked up dice. You have to use them. I don't know how it's going to affect your game. I have a D6 where the 6 is missing. It's just a blank spot on it. I don't know where this was used. I got it randomly somewhere. And I decided it'll be a cursed sword. That when you would roll a 6, the sword phases through them instead. That's the only negative. It's a normal sword otherwise. It's just when you would roll a 6, nothing happens. And that's the curse, right? This is exciting. You don't want to fudge that. They roll a 6 and it would phase through, but then their guy's going to probably die. You don't fudge it. You don't fuck with it. Let it fail.
Yeah.
Let them suffer. You don't try to fuck them over, but like when it happens, roll up a new character. OSR, right? You might like the next one more.
I've played both ends. Like I've played like hard ass competitive games. And I have found fun in that, in like really min-maxing your sheet or doing your army list like really hardcore, playing towards the meta. And I think that's fine, and it can be fun. I've had a lot of fun going especially into like 40K or Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar, the big battle games, when you get like really into like, I'm going to go hard in the rules, or you're like going into D&D 5th edition or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to make the most exploitative character that I'm just doing like crits all the time. But just as long as you're playing with people who feel the same, because I had like an introduction group or some friends in college were like, hey, we want to play D&D, we know you're into it, so I set up like Baby's first campaign, you know, just to like, I was fudging all the numbers in the scene just to show them like a good time. And they had a lot of fun, and we ended up doing campaigns. And then I had one friend who was a very experienced player, so he rolled up this like elf barbarian that was just like min-maxed the fuck. He was getting crits off of all of my monsters because my friends had no idea. My other friends had no idea what D&D was. They're all like, "What do we do? I guess I attack." And my friends like, "I do this, this, and this," and it was just like defeating every encounter. And I was had to be like, "Hey, like this is." You know, let them play. We're gonna have some fun. Everyone's going to, yeah, everyone's gonna read the room. So if you want to go hardcore, post some hardcore people, and if you want to tell a narrative, post some narrative.
At the end of the day, it's it's the table, like you're saying. You know, you adjust, give into that.
So I was doing like extra hard stuff for him, and I was trying to like be like, he's like, oh, this like kills it for sure. This is like 40 damage, and I'm like, well. Now there's something else going on, just because like he was killing everything before, you know, and else is so you gotta. That's why it's like an art. You gotta adjust it. You can't be a machine and just be straight ahead.
You gotta pull that
And then,
player
you know,
to the
there's
side.
the practice.
You gotta pull that player to the side. You gotta be like, look, you want to play this game, and they are learning this game, right? It's okay for you to want to be that overpowered, ridiculous character. But how about we send that guy off to his tower for the next session, and you can play as you. Like I remember, my younger brother had a similar situation where I like punished him by saying you gotta play as Hobart, the level 1 halfling, right? You have to play as, and he was giggling about it. Okay, fine, and I got stuck with an underpowered character that could barely do shit, right? Sure, it's not as fun for him. But he enjoyed the story, and now he's stuck in this body that sucks, right? This min-maxing player that has all this knowledge of the game stuck in a vessel that's like worthless, has a frying pan and a sock, right? That's the fun. It's, I don't know. I'm biased.
I hope that that's rewarding. Yeah. I think it's fun to impose challenges for yourself. You know, like. I feel like everyone here probably plays some RPGs. I feel like everyone here has probably played some New Vegas. Like one of the most fun things in New Vegas is doing like a new build to challenge yourself. Be like, not just I'm only going to use energy weapons or something, but it's like no, until like level 10, I'm only going to use like the BB gun. You know, stuff like that. It really, or Nuzlocke challenges for the Pokemon. Really, like I've mastered the game. Let me do something stupid. Let me be stuck out as a level 1 bard, and I'm going to try still to min-max.
When I was in college, I think it was my second year of college, I was just walking to a class, I see a guy on his laptop, never knew the guy, never met him. He was playing Dark Souls 1 on his trackpad, and he was going through Sen's Fortress. This was before they took down the Prepare to Die edition, and the port was like, they just threw all the keys on the keyboard, and they're just like, oh, fuck it. It was a horrible, horrible port. And this guy was like, his hands were like splayed across the keyboard. He was using the trackpad to look around, like it was a nightmare. And he was forcing himself to play it that way, because that's the fun, forcing yourself to push the boundaries of what you're capable of, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Overwatch came out, I had a friend who was really good, but he was stuck playing on like a shitty laptop, and he came over and he played my rig, which was top of the line at the time, and he was getting like into like diamond rankings, and he was like excelling, and I was just like, oh shit, this hardware was really holding you back, but it kind of nerfed it. Because when we would play together, it was like, we're playing at the same skill level only because you have a handicap.
Yeah, exactly.
I have very poor internet because I live kind of out in the boonies in Florida, and the place where I work has great internet. And it's very sad because it's like 5 minutes away, but no providers come out to us because we're like on the border between two towns. And it's so funny. Like I'll be playing multiplayer games just because I live far away from my friends, so a lot of online gaming is what we do. And so the joke is like when I go over to my work to play, everyone's like, he's taking off the anime character weights off of his ankles and wrists to play the finals or something. And it's just making me think like, if I had a sub 100 ping, these punks would be dead.
Yeah, exactly.
The challenge kind of comes down to what kind of group you're playing with. And I think that there's absolutely merits and there's absolutely like a very good and strong reason for like never fudging dice, you know?
Yeah.
I think, what you're talking about is, it's a good point. Like there's that, there's that intensity you're saying, like, for 100, shit rolls or unsuccessful things, there's something really beautiful and memorable. And I think there's absolutely something that should be taken away from that, because it's important when you're playing these games. And I think one of my biggest advantages is I got a job running games in New York City at this really cool cafe called Hex and Company. And there was a board game cafe, and they would have D&D encounter nights on Wednesday. And I came there, and I loved it. And I moved to New York for this job opportunity that was wild. I was living in Manhattan for my work, so I had access to all these places. Beautiful experience. And I had just gone there because I knew no one when I moved up there for work, because I was supposed to meet with somebody I knew, but his wife got sick, so he had to stay there. So I spent weeks and I had never lived anywhere big. Came from a very small town, and I'd lived with my family my whole life. So it was a big culture shock. So I'm like, I'm just going to go try to find hobby people at least.
Yeah.
And so I found this place, and I had just come to the encounters every week, and I was offered a job. So I got to play games with all different kinds of people. Like my first game that I played there at that Hex & Co place was with the drag queen lead guitar for a band called Power Bottom,
Awesome.
2 lawyers, a nursing school student, and not a notary. They are a stenographer. They were a stenographer for the United Nations, right? So like crazy stuff. People that had no earthly business meeting together, and we played, and it was really cool, just to talk to people and game with people that had completely different perspectives on the game. It was really, I had a group for one of the paid games that I did, and they were a group of friends that were all from Pakistan, and there would always be funny things, because one of them would always go like, darn, I don't know that word. I'm like, it's fine, your English is great, you should never be bothered that you didn't know what the word for trebuchet was. Number one, it's French.
Yeah.
And that's never going to come up in your real life. But like, just to have those experiences with people who English is not their first language when playing an RPG, or just a completely different idea of what cool fantasy means. Or like, when I described swords or armored knights, there was this different image to people. You were talking about what people's
Perception,
particular
yes.
images of a certain character or idea is. Yeah, the perception. And so I got a really wonderful chance to just play with so many different people. Like, my main group before I left there was my very good friend who was an OBGYN doctor from Australia, a professional comic artist from New Jersey, a physicist, just wonderful, wild, like, group of people. And that we love tabletop games in the hobby so much is that, it just brings people together to tell stories and do this really wonderful, intimate art together. But the advantage I had with just meeting people and playing with different people gave me like so many different ideas and helped me understand what's fun, what works, what doesn't, and helped me change my opinions on things that were maybe a little cringe, if I put it lightly, just the kind of stuff that maybe stop and think like, is this what I'm doing perpetuating some kind of negative stereotype, or is this what I'm doing actually helpful or fun at all, or just a part of the status quo of what I think
They gave you perspective, is what I'm hearing. Perspective, right?
Oh, what'd you say?
They gave you perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, perspective. I live in California. I live in a pretty diverse part. So I'm in Silicon Valley, and I've always had like a big variety, a big diversity of gamers. I mean, most of us, we all have our similarities. A lot of people work in tech, but Like, I didn't know that there, like, in other parts of the country, like, D&D isn't as queer. Like, here, like, yeah, you know, I'm in California, but it's just like, if you're into D&D, you're probably also somewhat gay,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, there's the Venn
adjacent.
diagram of I was
Yeah.
about to say, of being a theater kid, gay, or just
Yeah.
a nerd, and then there's tabletop games in the middle there.
You probably have, you know, some political opinions more inclined to like liberty and personal freedoms. And I like grew up. I call like the internet also like my hometown, and I saw like a lot of people in high school. Like I could have very easily been pushed into like the alt-right pipeline, like
Yeah,
like 2016, like make fun of social justice warriors, like haha Tumblr so funny sort of like era, and that ended up being like my focus in my major for anthropology. Is like I'm really interested in like the causes of like white nationalism and de-radicalizing people online. And luckily on the Instagram part of hobby space, it's been like 99% good. But
Nice.
occasionally, just like in any space, you do find some people who have that intersection of hobby space, and they are also a little more they might have some bigotries, they might have some internal or even external prejudices. And then like I forget what channel it is in here, but like one of the rules is like Nazis fuck off. I think it's in announcements, or
Yeah.
oh, it's in welcome and rules. Nazi punks fuck off. Yeah, so it's like, okay, it's like we're very explicitly here, like all in agreement, because we know that especially like 40K can get a little dicey.
Deathcore of Krieg. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I really appreciate both of your varied perspectives and your backgrounds, not just on creature design, obviously, but just on the hobby in general. I come from the background, as I mentioned. I'm a clinical intern therapist. I work with teenagers and youth and trauma, and I think that I have a psych background. I'm
Nice.
really interested in the mind, whatnot. Working with trauma and teenagers is my big thing, but it's really interesting to hear from different perspectives regarding the hobby. I think that the Instagram community specifically, sure, there's going to be a few. I don't want to say bad apples because I'm not going to judge them outside the little bits and pieces that I hear from them on Instagram. But there's going to be some people that are more politically charged, or some people that feel the need to express their varied beliefs. I just try not to make overt judgments because I don't want to live with drama. I'm not in this community for that, you know?
This is a very largely drama-free community, and I do appreciate it. I feel like most people are kind of on the same page as like what we want and what we want like in a community.
Which is, look, it's my little guy. He's just this big, but now he's blue.
Yeah, we're here for our little guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'll
For
show
my just
off.
little guy, which
Let's see. I'm going to show off what I've been painting. Hold on. You can
Oh,
kind of
please.
see him. He
Oh,
was a
that's
carrion
wonderful.
crawler knockoff. I'm painting him a reddish. You can't quite. Whoops. I'm trying to hold up so I could see it. It's like a lobster orange red, and he has pink tentacles and pink little anemone
I
eyes
like him.
sticking out.
Mhm.
He reminds me of the shell bugs from Nausicaa.
From
Yeah.
Nazca?
Actually, I just watched that movie. God,
Yeah.
it's a good movie.
Really, the
Uh,
knights are
there's-
so good in that. The blue knights with the capes. They're like soldiers.
Yeah, I was gawking about the design. for
That
this
design
whole-
is
I love that everyone's in like a
wild.
tunic and a hat. Yeah.
I love
So good.
Nausicaa. I'm gonna give like a 5-second spiel on Nausicaa because I love it so much.
Let's hear
So
it.
a lot It's four mangas written by Miyazaki before he did like his big movies. The movie is only the first one, and
Really?
they're
I didn't know
themed
that.
super cool. Yeah, there's three other stories. They're all fantastic. The technology is really cool. They're in the ceramic age, so it's like steel and metal and stuff. That's like garbage. That's like how we view like the Bronze Age. So you get to see cool ceramic age technology, which is just their its own totally cool, unique thing. And a lot of Eastern like manga and literature, the basis of is Journey to the West. Like
Yes.
that's like what that's like their version of the hero's journey. But Nausicaa is written kind of like a Tolkien-esque Western thing because Miyazaki, when his inspiration for it was Beowulf, which is like the
I
basis
love
for like
Beowulf.
yeah, it's like the basis for like Western mythology and Western contemporary like literature stuff. So Miyazaki he does like some international studies. He reads Beowulf and he's like, this is sick, and then he makes Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. Which is like really cool tech, really cool like anti-war themes, very like beautiful, still has action, and it's in like a really unique sort of like tech feudal world. I can't recommend their mangas enough. They're
I have the
criminally
first. I
underrated.
have the first one. Wish our store, like a local place, has really unfortunately moved, like from like odd shaped or like obscure manga or like stuff that's popular pretty much to just only like the mainstream shonen stuff. So now I have to order most of my stuff online. Um, I did end up. This guy ended up drawing, and I'm probably going to paint him at some point. But this is one of the guys I've been working on. He's a little animate stone that just got his little face and eyes.
Oh, I can just barely make it out.
Uh,
He's kind of like tilted to the side a little bit.
He's kind of like, here we go. I think maybe it'll be.
I think I can.
Tanner, it's Tanner. It's a big white ball.
But that's one I have. And then while we were talking, I got one side of a roof done. Here we go. So one more roof is almost done. So
I like
Oh, look at that.
I like the Warcraft blue roof.
Yes, this is the good guy team. No, I have to spray all these down with my dark brown and then stipple them because I love terrain's probably one of my favorite things to paint. I love painting my miniatures, but something about terrain, I'm like, and now it's a castle. is very.
I've been doing all my browns, so I have like a million projects on my desk. I have this corner desk, and you can see I have stuff spread all over.
I'll show you as well very quickly my desk that I built to be long enough to hold all my projects.
Good. So when I put like my paint out, then I'm like, what do I have on my desk that could be this brown? So I have the base for one of these guys, and I have the old
Dude.
Bloodthirster.
It's Bellicor, right?
It's not a bloodletter, it's a bloodthirster.
Bloodthirster.
Oh,
yes.
He looks very similar to the gargoyle from Hero Quest.
Mm-hmm.
I got him in a bits bin at a store, minus the arm. This arm is an orc arm that I did some green stuff and I took off like the sci-fi bits of the axe. And it turns out that the orc arm exactly fits to scale, like the hand is like exactly the scale of
That's
the
funny.
of the
great.
bloodthirster.
That's really funny.
I put him on, I don't know, what is this, 40 mil squared base? God damn it, he was really... I think this might be like lead, like pre-Games Workshop white metal, because it's really heavy, and this is the first time that I've, like, out of lead. I've done pinning for some metal pieces here and there, but this was like everything needed to be pinned. I don't know how people did this before pinning. Like when I look in like the White Dwarf magazines and they have these big old metal models and there's not like a shit ton of like super glue residue like all over the edges. When I got him, he was just like covered in glue and
Super glue was
epoxy.
probably just more dangerous and effective back then.
This
It's had
super
less
glue.
regulations.
I don't pin shit. On all my metal models, I use this, and it's never failed me. Never. This
Just Loctite?
Loctite Professional. It costs a lot, but it's worth it. I'll also show you my pile of shame. Get ready. This is going to be a doozy. My metal... It's like... I'd say about 99% of it's metal. Get ready for this. This
Oh, that's a sick wall.
is
Oh, you also have like Electrical Works tool drawers as your mini parts. I have those too.
Yeah, I've got. This is not metal. This is
They're so
just
nice.
extra plastic shit. This is all metal. This is the goblins one. These these are metal goblins.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, I love goblins, and I'd buy them in like groups, and I'd paint one. I'd be like, cool, I scratched the itch. Eventually, I'll paint the rest. But
Yeah.
some of those are goblins, actually. If you've seen Goobins Gets Goblins.
Oh, Goobins are great.
Goobins
Yeah, I was
Goblins
looking at
are nuts. He actually just, on that topic quickly, he just posted a new sculpt he did where they're like giant helmets with feet. And he told
Yes,
me
I saw those and I love those.
that they're, well, this is the fun part. He told me, well, Tanner, people don't know that there are goblins in there. Like, they're just goblins in giant helmets. Like, that's their armor. So I came up with a concept that they are like the front lines that like bowl through enemy formations just by like running and rolling. Or they like run through a door and like bust through a door, like running head first into it.
That's
And now
great.
I'm excited to paint them. I really want to get my ones in the mail as soon as they're cast up and ready to go, at least.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm
My,
very excited about that.
I think my miniature that I'm always like, I could use more. Skeletons is up there, but little schlubby, like, villager warriors will always be my favorite. Like, I love the Frostgrave miniatures and, like,
Oh,
the
yeah, I've
Dark
seen
Soldiers. Like, anytime it's just some, like, guy who's like, I had a stick in a shield. Like, those will always be my favorite. Like, that's all the ones I'm using for my game that I keep talking about with the big group. Like, I've got, like, a tired old man in like a studded leather vest with a square shield and a spear. It's perfect. Or like some guy. I love a good silly leather cap.
Yeah, I can agree.
So anytime there's a guy with a dumb hat or a silly leather cap, I'm like, get me that man. I actually really like. So Reaper has a little box called Henchmen and Hirelings, and it's tight. If you want like schlubby
Are they metal?
goober. They're not. They are the hard plastic, but it's like the Bones Black, which is the nice higher quality.
Oh yeah. Paint the Bones Black series. They're really good. Okay, it's not. I know exactly what you're talking about. This is like the crummy white plastic.
The
Reaper
white
stuff.
plastic is rough.
It's okay. No, the black Bone
starting
series is
out.
really good.
Actually, my very first mini is one of those. I picked them up at that.
I can't fucking stand Bones plastic. Their metal is great. I love their metal stuff. I cannot.
Oh, so you are all about you're just like 100% metal.
If I
like,
do,
pretty much.
I want metal models. Lead is fine, whatever.
Okay.
I'll be careful with it. I'm not gonna lick it. I'm not gonna ingest.
You know,
little
lick the end of your
particles.
fingers.
Not doing that. But I can't stand like resin. I think the reason I like metal models is because in the future I could strip it and I could repaint it. I know you can do that with plastic. Resin is iffy, but something about metal models. When
Resin
I
is
strip
definitely.
it, I want to throw the metal model in, like, acid. And I don't want it to, to melt. I just want the paint to come off, and it's fine. I've used LA's Totally Awesome forever for stripping models, and it has been wonderful. LA's Totally Awesome does not fuck around. Buy it for $1 at, like, Family Dollar. Bottle this big. Looks like urine. That stuff is great. It never fails.
I just got into it, or not just, but a couple years ago. Simple Green, because I buy most of my models secondhand, and Simple Green is okay, but it doesn't do everything.
No, it sucks. Fuck Simple Green.
Simple Green is like when I looked up how to strip plastic models. That was Simple Green, and I think LA's Totally Awesome is just the better version of Simple Green.
I
But
can agree there.
sometimes I've tried both. I'll try 4 things, and it's usually one of the 4. Goobertown Hobbies has a really good video on testing all like the paint removal things. and I try to like look at that and think of that. I wish I could know like what brands is like Krylon good with acetone or whatever. But isopropyl alcohol has actually been my favorite for plastic. LA's
No,
Totally
I've
Awesome
tried that.
is really
Yeah.
good, but isopropyl alcohol sometimes will get like the really tough primers. And I think LA's Totally Awesome is really good at taking off acrylic paint, but I haven't had them come completely off. Like the Army Painter, if you ever know that you're stripping something Army Painter, isopropyl alcohol is really good at getting rid of Army Painter primer. It's just
Really
like it
interesting.
makes it look like gray plastic again. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I've never had issues
Very
with
good to know.
LAs. I'll just throw anything in the soup, and then just like one time I forgot about a model in the soup for like
How long do you let it
months.
sit?
For metal, who the fuck cares? Like, it depends how bad the paint job is. Like, for a lot of old school D&D stuff, you're gonna get like enamel paints. You're gonna get really rough old paint jobs. Sometimes it's just like paint on metal and it comes off perfectly in one go and just like literally 24 hours and it's like perfect. Other times it's
Do
like
you
you'll
use a
scrub.
toothbrush?
Yeah, I use a toothbrush. But if it's an enamel, you have to use a needle. And you're gonna say, why, Tanner? You're gonna scratch the model because the enamel, it's like candy coating. And when you dig
Yeah.
the needle in a little bit, you don't touch the actual model, and then you pry, and it chips a huge chip off because it gets in all the crevices and like in the creases, right? So it's really, you have to be really careful. It can be a pain in the ass, but for some models, you'll have to do like two. You'll have to scrub off the first layer, and then there's a second layer, and then you just let it sit for another day. But usually, like, I've only had one model that I have not been able to successfully strip. It was a larva from, I think, Grenadier, maybe Ralpartha. It's like 3 worms with human faces. And for some reason, it's just like the crevices on that model, it's just a fucking nightmare. Ironically, Dellen, who I mentioned 15 times in this recording, sent me a bunch of old D&D stuff, and one of them was a clean larva, so I'm pretty stoked that I have one that I don't have to fucking strip anymore.
Excellent.
Just by complete chance. Very excited about that.
I love Harbor Freight. I don't know if you guys have a Harbor Freight around there. I feel like
I've
there's
heard the
a
name.
pretty big domestic. It's like Dollar Tree for like tools. It's like
Oh,
you can
sure.
get like an angle grinder for like $15.
Yeah,
And it
okay.
might last that one project, but if you just need to cut up ceramic tile in your bathroom once, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
So for like $2 or something, you can get a brush set, and it'll have a steel brush, a brass brush, and a really thick, firm plastic bristle. And the plastic bristle is really good because it won't. For Games Workshop white metal, so like post 95, you can use the brass, and I haven't had any scratches on that. But if you're doing something older than that, the brass brush will mess it up. Also really good if you're texturing foam to make it like wood grain. You can use like the sharp brush or the steel brush, but if you use the steel brush on any metal models, it'll fuck it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
just use a toothbrush. I haven't had issues with it. It's just like, it can be a little slow sometimes, but it's okay. It's therapeutic. It's cathartic.
it is. I sit in my garage and I put on like my audiobook, and I have like my little lamp, and I scrub my models in the garage concrete sink.
My first YouTube channel, my shitty YouTube that somebody might be watching right now. The first video was me stripping a model in like complete silence for 5 minutes. just me like scrubbing a model in the basement and like breathing heavily, not noticing that I was mouth breathing the entire time. I have I don't know if I've showed you guys this. This is the camera I use to record from my YouTube stuff. I tried to find
I remember seeing that a couple months ago.
I tried to find the lowest quality camera possible, and it's like a creep spy pen that it's just like a micro pen camera thing. I'm planning on bringing it to Adepticon so we could like throw it, and we could have recordings of the camera being thrown. like at other hobbyists, and they grab and they start recording, you know. So it just travels around different hobbyists in the Instagram community. They have an uploaded video from like a bunch of different people's perspective.
That's so fun.
I had forgotten which camera you were on. In my head, you're like on like a Game Boy camera.
No, I wish. I need to find an even lower quality camera. This thing, I could go lower, I think. I want to compress it to
There's a retro game shop by my university, and they have a Game Boy camera like live streaming. So like it's a game. It's called Game Shop downstairs. You literally go downstairs under like an electronic repair shop. But the upstairs has a live webcam feed through a Game Boy camera.
Yeah.
You're like walking by, but it's very high. It's very high refresh rate. I don't know how they finagled it, but
that's interesting.
It's like you can like clearly like move your arms and stuff, but you're just made out of bricks.
What wizardry.
Have you seen Trent takes a lot of selfies on a Game Boy camera? I've seen him post them. I don't know. Yeah, Trent's cool. Gotta get him on my channel someday. I've just been faking.
I just watched his Tyrannid Titan one. That was a lot of clay. I don't know if that was like an Australian clay, but when I think of oven baked clay, I think Sculpey, which is not very good for models because it'll like crack under like paint. Like it doesn't take like moisture very well, and it'll like eventually just crumble.
Something. Where the fuck is it? I got the worst clay ever. Like it genuinely. I don't know if I could have picked a worse one. I don't know where I put it. I just cleaned my whole area. Believe it or not, it doesn't look clean. It's like Crayola air dry something. I was just looking for something like really cheap.
Model Magic.
Model Magic, that's it.
Wait a minute.
I look for the cheapest shit possible so I can make like the shape I want to sculpt over. Yeah, it's that. It's literally it's a different shape, but it's that. It's white. Yeah.
That's what the guides are.
It sucks.
Yeah, it cracks like hell.
Horrible. So I wanted to just experiment with it, right? So I sculpted pots. I put little faces on them. And then I fell in love with those sculpts. Those sculpts are what turned into my vassal sculpts. So the guys that I just got casted.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like here's one of them. You can barely see them.
Dude, I love those little vassal guys. They're fabulous.
Yeah, they were made out of fucking Crayola Model Magic, and the caster I was talking to, he was like, "These are gonna explode. Like it'll work, but they're gonna be destroyed afterwards. Like, 'cause the pressure is gonna like destroy them. That's fine. So the keys are gone for those. They are dust in the wind. They disintegrated
Everything
after
else will be
being
a copy of a
casted.
copy.
Yeah, it's a copy of a copy of a copy. It's okay. Yeah, those. I'm never using that to sculpt again. I might make it like a template to sculpt over, but I'm never gonna use it as detail. I'll show you one more that I haven't shown off very much.
Yeah.
I sculpted this fish person recently.
Oh, excellent.
Out of green stuff, so he could match my other fish person that I want to get casted eventually. You can't really see, but they're roughly the same length, except the one's like propped up, the one's not. This guy apparently is a nightmare to cast, so he's been waiting for a very long time. Someday. Well, I'm gonna jump off. My thing is gonna finish recording in a second. Apparently, it can go over 1 hour, as it's been recording for an hour 52. But this is going to be about a 3-hour long video. I want to thank both of you for being my guests. I very much appreciate your input and unique perspectives into creature design, the hobby, etc. You guys DM me. Let me know if you are going to Adepticon, if you change your mind, if the cards are in your favor. I'll bring you under my wing if you haven't met the rest of the community, or if you're a little newer to the Rust boys.
That would be awesome.
Whatnot.
I would love to. Yeah, super nice to meet you. It's cool to meet someone where I'm like, man, their art is fabulous, and then be actually talk to them. That's great. And very nice to meet you too. You said your name was Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super nice to meet you. Yeah.
So is your name
Tanner?
I thought David. I know Tanner. I read your name this whole time as Hugh Strong, not Hug Strong. So I was like, oh, this is Hugh.
Hugh Strong.
Hugh is strong.